guess that under the New York State Fire Code, pen permits have a time limit on them of 180 days. However, I don't. So that's a New York State building code issue, and I don't particularly have an opinion on that. The issue of whether or not, so Glen Park Tavern or any other business in the village can certainly apply for a seasonal outdoor seating permit. They run from March 15th to the end of November. I gather the concern with doing that, and you don't have to own the property. If you've got a lease, that's fine. And that goes for the planning board, goes before the planning board and gets approved. Of course, this will be subject to the New York State building code issues with respect to the tent. So I gather the question is whether it is one of timing, essentially. Because if you were to apply for that now, you'd have to wait for a planning board meeting and get approval for that. I do think the village, the mayor has the authority under, to extend the emergency order that could allow this without going before the planning board, but you could also require that anybody who, for a limited period of time, but you could also require that they apply for the seasonal outdoor seating permit and go through that process, as soon as possible. That to me seems like a way you could handle it, but of course it's up to you as to whether or not you think that that's, the way to go in terms of using your emergency powers to authorize that sort of use. But again, nobody's preventing anybody from applying for a seasonal outdoor seating permit through the process that's laid out in the code. But I understand that there may be timing concerns with that.
So I have a question, Chip. So what did we do last year? Because I know we came before the board, we waived the process of going to the planning board.
And it was under the mayor's emergency
powers.
Order. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to the extent, basically all of the current executive orders from at the state level have been extended. We're still in, and COVID's not gone away. And I certainly understand for your industry, it's still an issue. So, but it's that, so that it was a power that was exercised under the mayor's emergency powers that are authorized under New York State law. So that could be extended.
And did that?
But I think the concern maybe from the building department, maybe is that they don't necessarily want to see this being used, when there is another process in place, and to be used indefinitely to get around that process. So that's why I was suggesting that if the mayor was inclined to extend that deadline, but require applicants to actually apply for the seasonal outdoor seating permit, to the extent you anticipate this being something that you're going to continue to do for a while, I assume you would have no objection to doing that.
No, that's what we did last year. As long as you could
open in the interim.
Yeah, that's what we did last year. I think the question now comes in the tent. We didn't put the tent up until late last year.
Yeah, so the tent issue to me, the tent issues, that really is something for the building department, because they're the ones who enforce the New York State building code and fire code. And all I understood, and again, I'm sorry, I didn't actually be able to talk to Tony today, but from what I understand, that can still, as long as it conforms to the fire code, those can be erected for up to a time period of no more than 180 days, which is 6 months.
But wasn't there something in the law last year that was part of the emergency powers from the state to allow those tents to stay up longer, because so many people had tents up throughout?
Possibly. The governor has issued, well over 100 executive orders. I don't have them all committed to memory. I guess we could check into that. I don't know whether but we're talking about 180 days. I do think we're likely to be out of this emergency 6 months from now.
That's what I said a year ago, Chip.
That's
I
a
think
good
what we
point.
did last year,
But you know, it seems to me you could revisit that issue if and when that arises. But we can take a look at that. I'm not aware of that specific super session. But I wouldn't be surprised if that was, you know, if there was a super session of that limitation. But that's something.
Ellie, I think what we did last year, and there's been a lot that's gone on, so forgive me if it's not correct, but I thought that you did still apply. We just waived the requirement to go to planning board in essence of time.
Correct.
We should just extend that potentially if the board is so inclined to just waive that and just apply for a tent permit, basically. I think it's kind of what we did.
That's one option, or you could say, I mean, if you think this is going to be sort of a more permanent thing, or not subject to, you know, the point Ellie was making, if we think that thing, you know, that this state of emergency may end sometime, you know, to actually say, look, we'll extend it, I don't know, through the end of May, but anybody who wants to keep using it beyond, just go to apply to the planning board. There's enough time to get planning board review between now and the end of May.
So, and I think that Chip brings up a really good point, because so those emergency orders that I've been extending since this all started over a year ago go for 30 days and then they expire. So, you know, I don't have, you know, those could be done being supported in June. And so then essentially, if there's no executive order supporting that type of structure or, you know, outside seating, then you would kind of be left needing to go to the planning board at that point, is my understanding. So maybe, as what Chip is saying, maybe the way to do this is we extend it, and in tandem, while you're having the extension, you also go in front of planning board to actually get an approved outdoor seating plan through the planning board. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because they, you know, all the emergency rules only go for 30 days at a time. So
30 days at a time, right. So like we could be, you know, by June 1, and this is just a guess, I don't have any knowledge of that, but you know, June 1 or July 1, you know, it could be, well, okay, we're out of the state of emergency and we no longer have the state of emergency order, which would allow this to continue without having to go in front of the planning board. So then at that point, you're going to be kind of stuck. And, you know, if it's in the middle of your busy season, you know, it might be
and the other advantage of getting that plan is once you get that planning board approval of your seasonal outdoor seating layout, then you don't have to go back again. You know, then you just, as long as you do that year after year, you just go when you pull your permit, pay the fee, you pull your permit. So rather than trying to do this on a sort of monthly basis and the mayor extending the deadline, I just think that you know, again, it's not for me. This isn't really elite. You know, the mayor can do that. It's up to the mayor to decide how long or if it's justified to extend that state of emergency. But it does seem that for the regulated community, that is the restaurants that want to use outdoor seating, they should, whether the mayor extends that or not, apply for that seasonal outdoor seating approval as soon as possible.
but there's several, Chip, you know, because I'm representing all the restaurants here. Like Maria has her little sidebar. She's not going to keep that up after COVID. You know, once she can do 100%, that little side area is going to go away. I don't know if you remember last year, she set up a side area in her parking lot. And that was due to the fact that we were waiving, you know, the restrictions of going to the planning board, et cetera. So I think we have to keep that in mind too. You know, my situation is, yeah, I'd love to eventually apply for permanent outdoor seating out there because I think it's the way of the future.
Right.
But right now, you know, we're all in the situation where we're living month to month, and let's see what happens. So,
right, but as the mayor says, is eventually that's going to change,
right.
and the governor has not been really good about giving people a heads up as to
No,
when
I
he's
know.
going to extend or not extend. So,
Yeah.
to the mayor's point, you could be stuck then with, now you're stuck and you still want to use it. So that's why I think this suggestion of if the mayor extends the emergency order, but meanwhile the restaurants apply, then that seems the safest approach. Because I don't, I mean, I'm not aware of the planning board ever not approving an outdoor seating thing. No, there've been some issues with sort of the, they want to make sure that, I mean, the biggest issue in those tends to be the safety from cars, depending on where it's set up, and make sure there's appropriate barriers. But, that's obviously a legitimate safety concern. But otherwise, if, you get your approval, and then you'll be good, through the end of November, and you want to keep that configuration, do it again next year and for as many years as you want, or if you want to modify it, then you can of course go back to the planning board.
So it sounds like we just need to extend what we did last year and then give them time to get it in place. That's if the governor does pull.
That's what makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Ellie, is it your intention to probably put that tent up in the same area following summers?
Who knows? I hope so, but I don't know, Basil. I can't, we're living, month to month right now. So, I mean, a couple months ago, I would have told you I'm leaving. I'm done. I'm closing. So, if we could also check into the tent thing, if that is part.
Yeah, I'll check. I'll really have to talk to Tony about that, because frankly, he would know better than me, but I can certainly look into that. Like I said, I'm not aware of a specific executive order that says that waived that 180-day period, but it's certainly possible that. Yeah,
it's definitely, because I know a lot of tents were up, not just the village, we're talking all of New York State, right?
Yeah.
We're up for, months and months and months.
Right. But even if that's true, so this is the thing, because obviously there's a number of issues going on with the governor. But right now, really, all of his executive orders that have already been issued, before the legislature tried to sort of rein him in a bit recently, but he extended them all, but only through April something right now. Again, he's likely to extend those again, but we probably won't know. So the only reason I mention that is even if it's true, and I'm not saying that it's not by any means, that he extended that period of time, which you can have a tent up, and I think that's quite possible, given for the reasons that you said. It's also true that could expire, expire next month, or could expire in May.
But then I'd have 180 days.
Right, then you'd have right. Presumably.
Right. So
I can take a look at that, but it just does seem to me that the best thing for the restaurants to do is if they plan to go outside, to apply to the planning board, even if the mayor extends for another 30 days and maybe another 30 days beyond that, because then you'll be covered.
Yeah. So the other question for the other restaurants is, they're all seating outside right now. I don't know if they're aware that they were supposed to apply by March 15th.
Yeah, probably not. And I had to go look at it too. I was to see what the dates were. But yeah, it's a long period of time in the code. So the seasonal outdoor seating permit, if you get one, runs from March 15th to the last Sunday in November.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
And just to be clear, so what is it? Apply by March 15th. The reason why, because when that law was written, in another time before COVID, the assumption really was, well, people weren't going to be doing outdoor seating in December and January and February. But of course, during COVID, they have. So I can understand why that nobody would have been necessarily thinking about that deadline.
But the mayor graciously extended that last year and the board to March 15th of 2020. But I think it got lost for the restaurateurs. Like, they don't know that they were supposed to apply for their permits already,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we can, I mean, there's,
And that's why an
it's
extension,
not hard.
oops, sorry.
I was just gonna say that that's the date that, we happen to pick and we've used in the past, but, I think restaurant owners have a lot more on their mind than, looking for that March 15th date to come, so.
Yeah, and if people think, and if the industry thinks this is going to become a more permanent feature of dining establishments, maybe the village really needs to revisit that whole section of the code, because right now it really only authorizes outdoor seating between March 15th and the end of November.
And, that's definitely something that, on the state level, at the New York State Restaurant Association, we have discussed.
Yeah.
Because of, consumer confidence. It's really, people are, have panic attacks about what's going on. And, so they really want that choice. So it may be something we revisit.
Yeah, and again, it's not for me to speak to the policy choices for the village, but I could imagine that, again, I think those dates were picked because that's when people thought there would be demand for that. But if I think if the village thought there was going to be demand, can't imagine the village would probably be with those dates being, January 1 to December 31st. What is it? If the village is okay with the design, I would expect the village doesn't care if that people are outside in February. That's really no concern of the village, as long as the design is a form.
I think, for myself, I want to make this process as painless as possible.
Yeah.
But I do think that the process exists for a reason, and we don't want to just keep overriding it.
Yeah. But I do, because Ellie isn't going to be able to get to a planning board meeting like tomorrow, right? That's not happening. So we need to, allow for room for, her to get to that and get that all, through that avenue and cleared essentially. And, I would think I'd be extending the executive order at least another 30 days. That's expiring. I think my latest one is April 11th. That's sound right, Judy? I think April 11th, we extended it to the last one.
Yes.
So currently would expire April 11th. But, as Attorney Greco just said, it's anyone's guess if the governor's going to expand after, his April deadline. And if not, then I won't be able to either. So then that's where we would be left with the issue of having to have you go to the planning board to make that happen.
Doesn't the governor do it at the first of the month, I thought?
He's all over that.
No, they've all been extended through April. It's not the first of the month. It's around that same date, April 11th, somewhere around there.
Yeah, because that's where ours currently ends. And I want to say ours got started, a few days maybe after the governor initially gave out his first executive order last March.
So are we saying the point is that there's sort of two issues, right? So thing one is continuing as we are, based on the executive order and enforcement being, essentially a lower priority, right? And then, but with the caution that at any point in the next 30 days to 60 days, we could find ourselves without that cushion anymore. And so it behooves business owners to start the permit process so that they can have it in hand the day that the executive order spontaneously expires.
That's right.
So all of I just looked it up real quick, but all of the basically the 200 and however many executive orders he's issued, that as of up to and including March 7th of 2021, he extended all those existing directives and executive orders till April 6th, 2021. So that is the current expiration date of the state, all the various executive orders that he issued during various times during this pandemic.
So you might not even have until April 11th. I mean, if he decided not to re-up them on April 6th.
But I think that's highly unlikely.
Well,
Yeah.
right, but
So Ellie, are you, what are your thoughts on everything we discussed here today?
Well, the way I understand it, you're extending it till April 11th when the governor's executive orders are ended, or April 6th or 7th.
April
whatever
6th.
Chip said. So that doesn't give me enough time to go before the planning board. I'm gonna guess he's probably gonna extend him another 30 days.
Right, yeah, and I would assume it will be no more than another 30 days, and then it might be another 30 days after that, but I don't think he's likely to extend them more than 30 days at a pop.
Yeah, that's all he's done, yeah.
Right.
So, you know, I'm okay with going before the planning board. I just, you know, I don't want to have take everything down and then put it back up again.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't see why you'd have to do that.
right, I mean, I feel like that's an enforcement issue
Mhm.
that the mayor can elect to tell the building code enforcement officer that maybe he doesn't need to be enforcing that this month.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you've done a really great job over there, and you know, so you've had no issues, correct, with it?
No,
With your set, okay, and we haven't had, to my knowledge, any issues or complaints here at Village Hall about it. So, you know, so I think we're in a good place.
Just a question for trustee too. When is the first opportunity for Ms. Brownhour to go before the planning board?
They meet the first.
Good question, let's see, so the next
Well, the
one
planning board is
Next month.
usually the first Monday of the month, so their April meeting,
would be the
well,
5th.
the 5th.
it's
and then
too
their-
late. You got to get everything in like 2 weeks beforehand. So it's too
Well,
late for April.
Yeah,
Right.
so,
So
yes,
it would be May 1st.
it would be the May 3rd, May 3rd. So I mean, you're talking about, in an absolute worst case scenario, you're talking about like a 2 to 3 week overlap of
Mhm.
time where
Right,
they're officially not permitted to be out there, they don't have planning board approval yet, but like, we'll just look the other way.
well, if the executive order is still in
If
play
you-
though, so then.
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah,
that's
so
the
if
worst
it
case
isn't,
scenario.
then worst case, right.
Yeah,
Could she not
So,
apply
Jeff-
for in the interim?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said, could she not apply for a mayor's permit in the interim? Should that happen as a backup plan?
Well, only if the emergency order is extended. I mean, the mayor doesn't have an inherent right to just issue a mayor's permit for something that requires planning board approval, but she does under her emergency.
Are we in agreement that most likely everything will be given an additional 30 days?
Yeah, that's extremely likely. I would be
Yeah.
stunned if that were not the case, but obviously none of us control that process, just the
The mayor
government.
gives a permit for the next 30 days beyond what it is currently, and at the same time, the Ellie's restaurant and anybody else's restaurant goes before the planning board May 3rd. That should kind of fill in the gap, should it not?
Well, I can't give a mayor's permit for, so what the extension is falling under is my extension of the executive order.
Right.
We're saying it's likely to be extended one more time at least.
Oh, at least, yeah, so I don't think we'll have to cross that bridge with, you know, with.
Hey,
Well,
Dad,
I think the restaurant owner needs to plan on being at the planning board meeting
Oh,
on May
yeah.
3rd.
That's what
Yeah.
we're saying, yeah, that's what we're saying. Yeah, Ally.
I believe last year we did have to fill out something just to let you know what we were doing, but I can't remember what it was, whether it was, I don't think it was a mayor's permit. It was more like a,
Yeah, it was just something with the building department. I think they wanted to know what you were doing. So, I mean, I would think just the next step would be tomorrow to reach out to Tim. And, you know, he'll certainly have a knowledge of this conversation tonight. And just see about, you know, getting on the May 3rd planning board meeting agenda. And then he can, you know, guide you through if there's a form or something you need to review or update. But it sounds like, I mean, you have everything the same as you did since last March, right, with your setup pretty much. Nothing.
yeah, I'm just adding some more safety things, but yeah, pretty much the same.
Well, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
No, I was just saying regarding the mayor's permit, I looked at it like when you have your Gimme Buffett concert and you put up a tent, I think, you don't go before planning board for that. So I'm just saying as an emergency situation, if it got lifted, why could we not look at least at a mayor's permit as call it a COVID, welcome back party. I don't know that extends for 2 weeks until you got in place. I'm just saying as an all last minute ditch effort.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I don't, it's not a mayor, I just don't think, I mean, using that term mayor, I think if the state of emergency is extended, I think it should just be done the same way it was
right.
previously under that. But
Yeah,
meanwhile,
I think Chip, to Al's point, I think he's just thinking like worst case scenario, like let's say there's like a couple week gap, let's say, the governor doesn't extend it past April 6th, and then we've got these couple of weeks until Ellie could go in front of planning board on May 3rd, but,
you can't, the mayor can't issue a state of emergency if the governor doesn't
Right.
extend his. I mean,
Yeah.
so we can't issue you can issue a mayor's permit for things that are authorized for a mayor's permit under the code. You can't make up a new mayor's permit by fiat.
No, I think Al was speaking like it would be an event permit kind of thing.
Right.
Oh, like just like a special of, okay, all right, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I wasn't saying let's change it. I was saying that if that came about, make it like an event, call it a COVID party event. I don't know what you call it, but
you know what, Ellie?
we gotta be creative here.
Ellie, I will work with you and all the restaurants. So if it gets to that point, we will work together and we will figure it out together.
Okay, yeah, awesome. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. So.
You gotta keep, of course.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, got to stay alive here.
Any other questions for us or anything else or? Good?
No, I'm good. I guess, at some point, we should sit down and talk about Music on Main, if that ever is to happen, and, which we all doubt, except maybe in August. So at this point, but, that's down the road. We know it can't happen now, but I think at some point we might want to talk about that.
Do you, when you say you doubt that it would be able to happen because of the numbers that are right now for gatherings, is that it?
Correct. Not only that, Deb, but like you have to have food with alcohol. Those bands are very expensive, anywhere from, $300 to $1,500 a piece. So you really can't pay a band that much money if you can't pack them in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if everyone's got to sit down and eat, it makes it much more difficult, and it changes the event,
It does. Okay, well, yeah, I'm happy whenever you guys, I did see that there was a discussion of it with the Louisville Business Association, but I'm happy to sit down and talk about it and see where we're at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you guys taking the time and extending it for, as long as we can, given what's going on. So.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, we want to see you and all the restaurants succeed, so it's win-win.
Yeah, but we're really gonna miss Al. Aw, not
I
fair.
know.
That's like another blow right on top of it. He's like half your sales right there.
I know. No more French fries out the door.
I'm gonna miss those fries.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us tonight, Ellie.
Yep.
Thanks, Ellie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep talking if anything else comes up.
Okay. All right.
Thanks. Okay, correspondence. Who has anything they'd like to discuss?
I've gotten a couple of, various sort of chatter about the meeting house and Dolly and stuff, but it's nothing that like.
We will have to talk about the meeting house shortly.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you want to save it for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did get an email from a resident. I don't know if actually they're a resident or not. They want, the resident's wife is turning 50 and they want to donate 50 trees to be planted. So I'm gonna reach out to the resident and find out, you know, are they talking about street trees, which are close to $200 a tree? Does he want to plant 10 or 20 or 50 of those for her 50th birthday? So, but it looks like somebody wants to help us with some trees, so.
Very generous.
So maybe the sapling or maybe part of our spring planting, so I'll reach out to them and find out more, but it sounds like a great idea, so I don't think anybody would oppose that,
Okay,
right?
Basil, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, Mr. Pinder?
We had someone come in who would like to rent the shelter, the large shelter at Island Park on May 8th, which is prior to when the park is open. We've already told her the park's not open, so there's no bathroom facilities. She would have to bring in her own porta johns. Other than that, you know, I said I talked to the board to see if they were okay with renting her the pavilion. We'd still charge the same amount of money. We're not gonna make any special rates or
Right.
anything. But I didn't know if you guys wanted to do that. Ben, I don't know if is Ben on?
Mhm.
Yes.
Ben, I don't
Yeah,
know
I'm
if you
here. You
have-
hear me?
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on if we open this on May 8th for them without opening the bathrooms? They are,
I have no issue with that. We'll have water to the back of the pavilion, and if they want to bring the porta potty on, by all means they can.
they'll have to, you know, the position, Ben would have to let them know where they could put it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't, you know, as long as whatever guidelines are in place
Right.
according to the governor as far as mass gatherings, and they agree to follow those said guidelines, then I don't foresee a problem. I mean, other than, and they seem to not really care that the bathrooms won't be open, they can bring in their own.
We lost the village.
Yeah, we lost the village.
Oh,
Chip, I was gonna make a suggestion
Yeah.
with that. You should probably make sure the village gives them something in writing that they sign saying that they'll follow all the guidelines. Otherwise, I think being your property, you guys are responsible.
yeah, we'll make sure we cover all that.
Keaton, do you realize we don't hear anything?
Or see anything.
Or see
I
it.
know. I see Chip and I see Dan.
Well, yeah, or see any, I mean, in Village Hall, yeah.
Yeah.
Village Hall dropped off.
Oh, that means we're done?
I hope not.
Well, because for one thing, they're redoing all that.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, they're redoing, so I don't know what the schedule is for those meetings.
Okay, they're
Yeah,
not.
so it may be done now, I mean. But yeah, do anybody else have concerns why we wouldn't rent to them or?
I guess there's gonna be a lot of motorcycles, which they've been told no motorcycles on the
They
island.
can't come on the island, right?
But I'm looking at her, she's saying 60 people attending the event.
Okay,
That's
that's
the
okay.
100 or whatever.
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, I mean, we have, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, they should be given a copy of all the current
Right.
guidelines.
Yeah, and I think that maybe is the big thing.
Weren't we talking about like a hold harmless or
Yeah,
release
yeah,
of
we'll
liability or
wanna-
something?
we'll wanna-
COVID waiver
release.
release.
Yep.
When we were talking, because we were
Yeah.
talking about the idea of renting like the meeting house or something.
We
Yeah,
said
similar.
about a COVID waiver
Yeah.
release, so we should,
Yep.
are we not live
Yeah,
anymore?
No,
Zoom.
They can hear you, we can't hear them.
Okay,
It's just
so-
1 second, I'm sorry.
that's okay. As long as they can hear us, we can keep going. Yeah, so I think for any of our rentals, I think we need to give them a copy of the current guidelines. You know, that's something that, so they are made aware of the expectation, right? And then I think we had asked Chip at one point about, do we have the said hosts who are the responsible parties signed or acknowledge some type of COVID waiver release form, is that something that we want to do as a board?
I think the answer is yes.
I think it makes them think about, I'm signing a waiver
Right, a
here.
waiver, and hope, right.
That I'm acknowledging I'm gonna follow the state guidelines at the date of the event.
So those two things, so once we can get Chip back on here, let's ask him about that, and thank you, Keaton.
I'm on. I just don't know if you guys can't hear us. But I can hear you.
I can hear you, Chip.
Okay. I don't know.
But
The village is
they-
gone again.
They can't hear us.
Karen just called.
Chip.
Can you tell her I'm in a meeting?
Oh, I know, but I know this.
Oh.
I'm saying, it's
All
just
right.
Cheryl.
Now we see them again. Can you guys hear us?
Oh, yeah, I can
Yes.
vaguely hear you. Hold on. So Chip, I wanted to know what your thoughts are about when we do rentals, be it for the meeting house or for one of the park shelters. Would you think that having the said host or the responsible party for those rentals acknowledge and sign a COVID waiver release form?
Absolutely. Yeah, we should make as a condition to any of the permit, basically during this, that people can acknowledge receipt and acknowledge that they are going to, receipt of if we're going to give them guidelines, receipt of that, and that they're going to abide by the state and CDC and any village guidelines if we have any specific ones, and that they're going to indemnify and hold the village harmless for anything that happens during that gathering.
Okay.
Would
So
that
that's-
include all events that the village would put on as well, Chip? Like my Earth Day, I have.
Yeah, I mean, so if we're sponsoring it,
All right. But we don't have to do
that's
it.
a little different, I think, but that's a good question. I mean, it's something we can think about. I think if we're putting it on, we really are kind of responsible for at least making sure that we're following the guidelines. And I don't know that we need, I guess I'd want to think about that a little bit as to whether we would expect people to sign a waiver if they attend one of our events, like, you may get sick if you come to our event. I mean, it's a bad look, I suppose, but we can think about that.
I was thinking more in terms
I
of
think that may be-
the vendors who come, like I'm having the Repair Cafe for Earth Day. And these are mostly senior citizens who have all been vaccinated though, who will set up tables under the pavilion in the open air. And they agree to do this because it is outside. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, what I would say is we should be very clear. I'll give a little bit more thought to that, but for now, I would certainly say that for any event that we have, and I don't know any of the details about the Earth Day event, we should make as part of that, we should probably distribute and advertise as part of that, whatever the guidelines are that we're going to be following.
Okay.
For COVID and
That makes sense, but I think the COVID waiver release form itself, I only think we should have that required for responsible parties that are renting one of our venues, a shelter or a meeting house. Having attendees who are coming to Earth Day sign a waiver. It's kind of, do you sign a waiver when you go into Wegmans? Do you sign it when you go to Walmart? You don't.
That's good.
So,
No, just making sure.
Yeah, it's kind of a turnoff, I think, if you were to go that route, but certainly for the responsible parties renting our shelter or one of our shelters or the meeting house, absolutely, we need to have a waiver. And I think, if you're all good with that, that's.
Yeah, when we did the playground build, we had rules in place, and we had someone taking temperatures as volunteers arrived, and they all had to wear masks the whole time, and yada, yada, yada. So from that perspective, we can do the same thing with the vendors, and then however, the meeting house, not the meeting house, the farmer's market is operated, the vendors relationship there would be similar.
Right, yeah, that makes sense, and then the attendees relationship will be similar.
Right.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay, let's see, do I have anything? No, nothing that I'll get to as we go through here. So, Keaton, you're up with grants updates.
Everybody can see you, but you can't see them yet. So,
Maybe
Technical difficulties.
you have to love technology, right, Keith?
so I'll go through grants funding real quick and then I'll fix the rest.
Okay.
So Bernie, Deb, and Anthony and Judy and I met last week, and we kind of just went through where we are at this juncture. And we talked about a little bit of everything. I did talk with Bernie because I saw that in the governor's first rendition of the budget, there is a DRI proposed in there, Downtown Revitalization Initiative. And it would include 10 communities, each of which would receive $10 million. And the reason we didn't do it a couple of years ago in 2019 was because they were lower amounts. And that was what Maggie suggested back then. So we could look into that again, and Bernie's gonna get us some more information on that. Obviously, like I said, it all depends on what's included in the governor's budget, which when it gets passed by the legislature.
Have they just talked about the scope? Don't they usually kind of give us an idea?
Only have very, very vague details on it. Nothing specific.
So, to be truly competitive in that, I mean, the projects listed, the scope that the community is trying to drive for has to be really like watershed changing,
Yeah.
community, revitalization initiative. We've submitted in the past and been unsuccessful because we just don't have that
Right.
big bullet thing. Only in Jamestown.
I think big transformation. like,
Huge
you know,
transformation.
Is what, and we're not really.
Right.
We've got some
An
goals and
audience.
some tasks. but
Exactly.
Yeah.
they're not-
Right. So we'll see what it entails, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay.
Never hurts looking into something.
Yeah, that absolutely
So,
doesn't
yeah.
hurt, yeah.
But there's that update there. I know Eileen and Deb were kind of looking into information on the mural. There will be a grant opening later this year. There will be a workshop with it. It's all inclusive type grant. It has to be more on the educational side. It can't just be art for art's sake. It's got to be, relative to the community itself. There's got to be a theme to it. So that's the way they've done it in the past. So what we can do is I can work with Bernie and Anthony, give them specifics of what we did on the previous mural that was done here in Village Hall.
Oh. If you can hear me, the village is gone again. No sound.
And it's showing that they're muted.
Hey. There's a lot of static. Do you hear all that static, Chip?
Well, I did before they were muted, but now they're
Can
unmuted.
everybody
again.
still hear us? Eileen, can you hear us?
Now we can hear you. Now you're back. Thanks.
Yep.
Eileen, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
No, I think we're done.
We can hear you guys. Village board.
Maybe I should text them. Oh boy.
I'm gonna miss that.
No, it's theirs.
When you have a good way, you can always call them still. or text them.
I'll zoom in.
Somebody's laughing.
Okay, so.
Okay, now we're good.
We're good? They can hear us? Okay,
Yes.
back
Can you
up.
hear us?
Oh, there we are.
Hey.
All right.
All right, so we can hear you.
Okay, great.
So Keaton, you left off, we were talking about the artist.
Yep.
And that, so Eileen, when we talked about the mural for one of the two locations,
Yes.
this grant that's coming out sounds very specific. So it has to be for an educational purpose, the grant. You can't, the art itself, you can't just paint like a flower because you like flowers. It's got to have like a purpose to it. And they're going to
Okay.
have an actual conference type, if you will, like a presentation of how to submit and what they're looking for. So if we can find an artist or two who might be interested in kind of going down this path of, which will probably be a little bit more work related, with having to be at that, attendance with that conference, then, we can kind of go from there. Keep
Right.
to that.
To that,
about the
Anthony
art.
did send me some information on that, a
Yeah.
bunch of documents. I still haven't had a chance to review them all,
Okay.
but when I get a chance, Deb and Eileen, I will give you all the information I got on that. So, it's something to look forward to in the summer. It's nice because it is a mural, and yeah, we do want to get it done, but it's something that we can work toward in the future. The grant money isn't essential to, right, it isn't essential that we get the mural done right now. So, at least there is a time aspect that's kind of on our side. We can just we can look at everything. If this grant's not for us, then it's not for us, and we can kind of move ahead,
Yeah,
So,
actually, Eileen, I have on here some information from Anthony, so I can just go ahead and forward it to you.
Okay.
Basically, the max awards for these grants are around 5,000, and it's a 50-50 match at the most, is what he said.
Okay.
The artist needs to be legally located in Erie or Niagara County. They would need to be supported with or put forth a resume and some work samples is preferable. So let me just forward you this right now, and then you can take a look at it.
Thank you.
I don't think our history would be educational. We have a lot of history in this village.
yeah, if we can tie the mural into
Yeah.
Right.
something Williamsville oriented,
Mhm.
I the mural into the history of Williamsville. It's educational. They want to do a mural, get a grant to do a mural in the pavilion.
So she mute herself?
That's hard.
Thank you, okay.
Well,
Um,
also what would be educational, I mean, actually Pete Warren and I discussed the Knoll Pavilion, and we were thinking like native plants, teach people that native plants are necessary in our environment, and we would paint native plants on, on the mural, basically at Knoll Center. I think that's educational.
I think that's very educational.
That's
It's
a good idea,
Yeah.
All
We've
right.
been playing with ideas, and that's one thing that we definitely discussed. So
Good.
Could be inspired by like the Victorian, Audubon, like,
right. Oh, those are beautiful. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Botanical little drawing.
Yeah.
Pictures with
That's
the
what-
name of it, the name
Yeah.
of the herb or the botanical beside it, very
Yes.
Right.
kind of education.
Scientific.
Yeah, I like that. Do you have any other grant updates?
Let's see. We do actually. The South Cayuga Crosswalk would be within the DOT's TAP grant, it's called,
Mhm.
and it could include other sidewalk issues. If we were to apply for it and receive it, at the earliest, installation wouldn't occur until fall 2022 or early 2023. So unfortunately, if you're looking at that grant to fit South Cayuga Crosswalk, you're looking at installation about 2 years from now at the latest.
And the TAP grant, what's did he say like what the value, potential value is?
You know what? He did not. He did not give me a range. Ben, are you on right now? Can you
Last
hear
time
me?
it was around 400,000.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm here. The
Uh,
TAP grant can be huge. The TAP grant would, if we got all of our sidewalk projects approved, I mean, they would cover it.
That's half the greenway.
So
Great.
that's good. If we can
It's
do that.
well worth going after in a comprehensive manner for something like that, include all of these little crossings and fixes that we want to do. So we have a base project, but if that's something that, you want to tie your greenway and this crosswalk and things into it, we need to look at that and be ready to submit when those become available.
That would be very cool.
All right. And that's all I have on that. We'll have another meeting with Corinne shortly. Our consolidated funding applications, which the state will open, those will open in May. So we should be back on a regular grant schedule. All signs are pointing to everything is getting back to normal on grants. So,
Okay. The one thing I want to add is we also talked a little bit about Empire State funding, possible comp plan funding. So, that was something, I don't think they sent any details over on that though.
They did not.
Did they get anything on that? Let me check. No, just on the arts. Okay, so he was gonna look into that, but there's a possibility that there may be funding for comprehensive plan updates. And one of the things that we talked about, he said, don't be so hard on yourselves as a village. He said, they work with communities that complex are like 40 years old.
Yeah.
So for us to have one that was done in 2010, and then again updated in 2015, you know, as far as hurting our ability to receive grant funding, he didn't feel that that was, you know, gonna be like a huge strike against us. So
No, I wouldn't think so.
yeah, so, but it was good to know that there may be possible funding from the, you know, through the Empire State.
Would that be under the CFA then, or?
That would be under, yes, under the CFA, and actually, it was on the other page of my notes. Thank you for reminding me. We would know by May 1st if that grant money is available for Empire State Development.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So that was good news, yeah. Do you have anything else on that second page?
I have an update on the playground. There is a new person assigned to our DASNY grant for the playground. So I started working with him today, real nice guy. Judy's actually worked with him before. So we'll make sure we get everything together so that we can get paid on that grant. So,
Great.
all right.
Since we brought it up, do we know what the total sum of expenditure is on the playground?
No, I did not get to that.
Okay.
I wanted to, and I ran out of time.
Yeah, and that's one of the things actually that we gotta go over to give to DASNY.
Yeah,
So,
I just didn't
yeah,
know.
so we should know soon though.
So the question leading off of Matt's question is whatever that amount is, whatever funding out of the 125 that we budgeted last year, right, towards the playground. So if we're getting reimbursed 125, my question is, does that 125 get carried over and to still remain, I guess, or however you?
I'm not sure, because some of it I think has to be used towards the bathroom.
Okay,
So I'm
that's right.
not sure
Okay.
where we sit. I wanted to look at that before tonight's meeting, and I just didn't get a chance.
Okay, but that, I guess, just generally speaking, though, any unused amount is gonna stay in
Right,
parks.
Yes,
correct?
yes, we'll put
Okay.
in an assignment in under
Yeah,
parks,
okay.
and it'll be there.
That's what we want to know.
We
Okay,
won't lose it.
all right, good. Okay, anything else or?
Nope, that's all I had. Thank you.
All right,
That was a
thanks,
lot.
Keaton. Yeah. All right, so let's get into board reports. The outdoor seating tent permits was discussed, and that's why Ellie was here this evening, so we can move past that. I just want to touch base on the meeting house. I did send this board an email, and I do on my desk have copies of the GAR appraisal report. So the amount that the market value appraisal for the meeting house came back at $440,000 from GAR Associates. And I also had a conversation then with Supervisor Kolpa to see if the town might be interested in purchasing the building from the village. And Supervisor Kolpa told me that he was interested. He's certainly going to want to take it back to his board for further discussion. But I just wanted to kind of make everyone aware of, you know, that was a conversation that we had. I think by the town purchasing it, if we go this route, I think it would be a win-win for everyone and offer a favorable outcome. Certainly for everyone who's involved, whether you're for the sale of the building or opposed to the sale of it. I think it would be a benefit for all. So does anyone want to comment on that further?
I'm just real happy to hear that, Deb. Thank you.
Good, thanks. Yeah, I am too. I mean, I think that, you know, they certainly have the resources to do what I feel has maybe never really been done here since we've owned the building in 1978. And, you know, we've had committees that have looked, I believe all of us sitting up here at some point been involved on trying to get theater in there or get music events in there. And, you know, although we were successful in doing those things very sporadically throughout the, you know, past whatever 20 years, I just feel that, you know, the town would be able to do it, you know, with justice with all of that. So
The other thing too is the issue with the pews, for example, has always been sort of a limiter. And if that were to be hangers-on for whatever reason, the town has a dry storage facility where they could actually
Absolutely.
relocate the
Store
pews
them.
for a period of time and store them, you know, in a protected way that they wouldn't degrade. And then it would open up opportunities for them for community center offerings, or, you know, continuing education offerings or whatever. And then the great part is that they actually have the staff and departments
Right.
full-time dedicated to activating spaces like that.
Absolutely,
Right.
which we do not, so. So it's all good news, I think. Anyone else want to offer up any comments? If not, I'm going to turn it over to Chip for any updates he has on the legal aspects of ownership.
I don't have much to add to that. I will say that I think if the town is interested, that would be an easier transaction, probably, just from a nuts and bolts standpoint, than with a private entity. But as for where things stand, I essentially, I sent over all the pertinent documents, or at least what I consider to be the pertinent documents, to the town, to Maggie, on Friday. So she and others over there are reviewing those, or will be reviewing them, and then I think we'll have to wait to hear from the town. So I gave them the appraisal report, the survey we just had done, the updated title search we had done, the deed, and the various some old court orders from the 1970s, when, because of the property was transferred from a dissolving religious corporation to the village, indirectly through another religious corporation, there were, the transaction had to be court approved, and it was. So there were some documents that we got from the title company that included those court orders. So sent all that information over there. That should be, you know, give the town plenty of, you know, most of what they would need to analyze the property and the transaction and what they'd be agreeing to, and, you know, what's, and also I should say I sent the preservation covenant also, that may or may not still be in effect. So we'll wait till we hear back from the town and go from there.
Okay, great. Okay, any other comments before we move on? Meeting house. All right, old business, that Los Robles water and the Natali development easement, where is all of that?
That's
Right, that's probably my update too. So we have drafted an easement, a draft easement. So actually, though, I have not yet gotten that over to, I don't know who wants to review that for the village. I mean, Ben should take a look at it, and Matt probably wants to take a look at it. And then we can give it to Natali's attorneys and hopefully, you know, get it in place.
Okay, so things are moving along with that, and we should be able to hopefully wrap.
Yeah,
that
and
up.
I should, the only thing I'll also add, if I can't remember whether I provided this update before, but I did at least have a conversation with one of Natali's attorneys about that. And so he didn't give any indication that he thought that would be problematic, but that was before speaking to his client. And I have no reason to believe that they'll resist that idea either, but I just want to make, you know, we'll have to wait. Once we get it to them, we'll have to wait to see what they think. And if they have any concerns with it. It's a fairly straightforward idea and concept, and I would very much be surprised if they would have a problem with it. But we'll see.
Ben, can you hear me? Ben?
Yeah, I got you.
Any problem with the functionality of the storm sewer on their property?
I would certainly hope not. It's all brand new.
Okay. No effect on private property in the area as far as we know?
I've had no reports of any issues other than what we had, which kind of started this issue, which is no longer an issue, back of Los Robles.
Okay.
That ponding no longer presents itself because everything is connected and water seems to be running downhill just fine.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to the next issue then.
Should we remove that from old business then, or?
I think
Well,
keep it on.
it's not done yet, so you might as well.
Yes,
keep
let's
it
keep it
there.
on.
Okay.
Yeah, it serves as a reminder so it doesn't get
Sure.
lost, so yeah, we'll
Okay.
keep it on. And then my other last item is a village dog park update. So since we last met, I did draft a letter and I sent a letter as a courtesy to the 10 adjacent parcels who are adjacent to that area on the Lehigh Memory Trail. Of those 10 parcels, 6 of those are town residents and 4 are village. I did hear back from 2 residents who were actually in favor of it. And I heard back from 1 resident who was adamantly opposed to it. So that's the feedback that I've received so far. And I spoke with Trustee Etu a little bit today about the dog park concept in general. So a couple of things. Initially, I think we talked about a 50-foot setback from all of the property lines. And we since then moved that up to 60, a 60-foot buffer, if you will. And when I walked by there earlier today, I came to think about, maybe we should extend that 60-foot buffer because I have had some adjacent property owners who aren't thrilled with the idea, make it a little bit more. So Trustee Etu was able to put together a, look at that.
Nice.
So this is just so great. It's such a
This is
great.
what we have to.
Yeah, exactly. You can't go anywhere.
My office doesn't get any work done, but I do.
Did you do? Okay. So if you look at this, it's the triangular portion of where the dog park is going to go. And he put it so we would have a look at what a 60-foot buffer would be, which is where we're at right now. And that was the schematic that I sent out to those 10 property owners, which include the 60-foot buffer. If we take it up to 90 feet, that's where we're at, and then a full 100 feet. So typically, dog parks range anywhere from a half an acre to an acre of property. That's the nationwide standard. Where we were at with a 60-foot was closest to an acre.
Okay.
And where we're at, I believe with the 100-foot is closer to like a half of that.
Fraction over a half.
Fraction over half. So I guess a couple of thoughts, because this dog park really is to enhance the walkability, the people who are already here walking in the village, I want to be sensitive to that. I don't want it to be a drive like location, like let's, I'll bring, like, so for example, on Smith Road, there's a group that meets out there called the Lab Club. They have Labradors and they meet at certain times and there's a bunch of labs running around. So my concern with this park is twofold. Number one, the size of it is going to be limiting. And then also the parking for it as well will be limiting. So if I have 10 people from a lab club driving to this destination, that immediately fills up all parking on the Lehigh Memory Trail, or pretty much darn near close to it. So this is kind of where, when I spoke with Trustee Etu today, I kind of had that thought, and that's where we're kind of toying with what exactly that buffer area could and or should be to meet some of those concerns. Now, the other part of this is that initially when we started talking about this last April, or actually April of 2019, the estimates that were given, the 3 estimates, we had a lowest estimate that came in around $38,000. And that was for a 50-foot buffer, okay? So if we decrease the amount of fencing, we're also going to decrease our fencing costs. What I would like to propose to the board is that we take a budget amount, a dollar amount that we're willing to spend to have this dog park installed professionally. And the other side note to this is that the Smith Road Dog Park since its installation of the fencing, I know throughout the years, they've had issues with that fencing, parts of it coming down. And most likely that's been an issue because it wasn't per se professionally installed. A group of volunteers actually came and did that installation. So in order to be respectful to that area long-term and not have to put a Band-Aid on it every couple of years with sections coming down, I would like to propose that we, in taking this budget amount, we not only budget for the cost of the fencing itself, but we also budget for the cost of the professional installation of it. So in looking around and toying with numbers, you know, I came up with anywhere between $25,000 to $30,000 to have this done. And that number would vary based upon the amount of fencing that we decide to go with ultimately and purchase. So I just wanted to hear everyone's thoughts on that.
I hate to be
Well-
negative, but I'm not in favor of it. So.
I can't hear what you said. Can you
Yeah,
repeat it,
I'm not in favor of it.
of the dog park at all?
I'm not in favor of paying that much just for the fence.
Right.
Cost of fencing in New York State, and a lot of that has to do with the prevailing wage, which we have no control over as a village.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It is a lot
Tony,
of
did
money.
you have some thoughts on it?
Who?
You, sorry.
Oh, I did. Well, you know,
Yeah.
I'm looking at this, this drawing. Now, are we talking about a fence that would encompass the smaller section now that it would be the 100 feet buffer? Or is this, because I thought the same price was for the 60 feet buffer we used, it would be a larger. No,
No, if it's, the larger the area, the more fencing that's needed, thus the higher.
of
the
course.
cost.
Because
Yeah,
I just
so-
remember the last meeting, it was 35 for the 60 feet buffer, but it isn't. And that's why we decided to possibly get volunteers to build it.
No, I think, you're correct. It was
Yeah.
like 38.
38.
For the 60-foot buffer. So
Right,
the suggestion is reduce the perimeter, reduce the cost. And so then the mayor's saying, if we established a number that we were comfortable with, and we went back to the fencing company and said, okay,
right,
How much
what can we get
fencing
for 25?
Mhm.
You know,
right.
you
What
doing
deal
a
can you give
really-
us? I get
Yeah,
it.
doing a really rough ratio of just linear footage. In theory, the smallest with the 100-foot buffer should be in that range.
Right. It does become a very small dog park, which is unfortunate.
Half an acre.
I have
Yeah.
a practical question. What is an appropriate acreage for various sized dogs for a dog park? I really don't know.
Well, I will tell you, it's anywhere, national guidelines, anywhere between a half an acre to 1 acre are standard dog park sizes. And what you do, based upon what you decide, you section it off and you make a small dog area and a large dog area. The large dog area obviously is gonna be a little bigger than the small dog area because the size of the animals inside that area. So that's national standards.
And for frame of reference, since we don't have any other, the Smith Road one, it falls just shy of 9/10 of an acre total.
Oh, does it? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's like-
nice,
it's
nice
like-
size.
It's like 0.89 or something like that, and it has about 20% allocated to small dogs.
And just too, you know, with that being an acre, it needs to be an acre because quite honestly, nobody lives around it. And anybody who comes to that park has to get in their car and drive to that park. So
Right.
it has adequate parking and it's a larger size park just for that reason, because you get people driving from all over to come out to that space and utilize it. Whereas this dog park is not gonna, it's gonna be a little different. I mean, it's not, you know, it doesn't have, you know, the amount of drivability, I would say, to it. I mean, it really is more for walkable Williamsville, for, you know, the people who are here visiting the village, walking their dogs. And that's kind of the vision that I have of that space.
Yeah, that does make sense to me. Now, the segregation of the large and small dogs, is that separated by another fence then? So that'd be
It is.
additional?
Yep.
And that would have to
That-
be part of that decision of what can you give us for 25 grand, you know?
Right, because,
Right.
yeah, because that would be also, I like the concept of a smaller park, honestly, because then it would be utilized more by residents who do walk down Lehigh Valley. You know, just to meet up with friends and
Yeah,
play with
that's
their
it.
dogs a little bit.
That's supposed to be.
Yep.
It's a little-
Yeah.
it's a
That's not
little-
a bad idea, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
it really
cost of the
isn't.
fencing, by the way, that 38, the initial price, that did include all fencing. So that would have been the divider between the big dog, little dog.
Oh,
I mean, that's all included. I was very clear that we needed, fencing to go through there. So, I think that, I think that it's a better proposal to, make it more of an intimate, let's say, dog park area as opposed to a vast sprawling acre.
Yeah, I like it. It's more like a cafe versus a restaurant.
Cafe.
You know, where you meet up with your neighbor and you chat a little bit and then you move on.
Yeah, and that's really what dog parks were initially designed for, and I guess depending if you have the space and it's out in the country, you can, have a 2 or 3 acre dog park if you want, but certainly when they originated, that was never the intention of them.
yeah, this should be boutique.
Very boutique.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Boutique. Yeah, I like that idea. I like that name as well. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Okay, so I just, I know I've spoken with you and you thought it was a better idea as well. So, I think we just need to maybe get comfortable with a number. And, I had thrown out like the 25 to 30.
I'm comfortable with 25 for sure.
25, okay.
25.
Mhm.
And
I am
see
too.
where that lands us, and I'd rather go in at 25 and have them come back and say, well, we can do that for 26,750, and then go in at 30,000 and have them come back and say, well.
I agree. Always start low.
Yeah.
Pitch them at 20 and see where they come.
Yeah, even
It's half
better.
the size, right? If it's half the size, it
salesman.
should be half the price.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
do we need to make a definite decision on what's the setbacks going to be? Does that need to be done first?
No, well, I was gonna see, I thought what I would do is just, try to see what we could get for 25. That sounds like that's a number we're all comfortable with. And then kind of go from there, feed off of that where that's at. Because we've got the, the renderings here. And as 100 is right around a half an acre and 60 is almost near a full acre. So, which either one from a national standard, anywhere between a half an acre to an acre is pretty standard with dog parks. So it's really gonna be our decision. And I think our decision, it sounds like, is gonna be a lot based on the price. That's what's kind of driving this right now, correct?
Yes, I would think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also being sensitive to.
Are you gonna rebid this?
I'm sorry?
Does this need to be rebid?
Oh, it absolutely will need to go for, because we're in a different,
If you just rebid linear feet, is that the way it's done, man?
I don't know.
Well, I mean,
I
I'm asking this.
think previously, I think it was.
You may find it, even though I'm not gonna vote for it, but I would advise, look at a linear foot number and then decide what your setback will be.
Well, that's. I think
that's what we're
the mayor's
doing.
doing.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
The other thing too is that, we're going to private contractors. Is this the kind of thing that's available on the state contract?
Could be, Ben.
I've never seen it, but I haven't. Nothing to it. I don't think it's on county for sure. But yeah, if you want to do it and have the village buy. Uh-oh, can you not hear me?
Yeah,
No,
we
Ben.
can't now.
How's that?
That's better.
That's better.
How's that?
That's good.
That's better, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
Copy.
So, quick answer is no. But some of the materials might be on state bid as far as posts, like chain link maybe, and then have the contractor install that. So we
Right,
purchase
so
the
we're not paying
material,
material price.
contractor,
Right, I was gonna say.
right, you don't pay a material escalation cost for your contractor.
Mhm.
That's,
That and
that's
too, I'm thinking about basketball courts and tennis courts and, you know, it's the same materials.
yeah. For fencing, yeah.
Okay.
So that might be another way to save some cash as well,
Mhm.
bring down per lineal foot price.
Okay. All right, well, any other points? Otherwise, I don't want to tie up with this too much, so. Okay, Basil, you're up. Do you have anything you want to discuss?
I do not.
Okay,
Keep on trucking.
Matt?
Keep on trucking.
Okay, so, I'm gonna do the old business first.
Yep.
Tim has committed to getting us some feedback on the updated permits chapter. The idea being that we could hopefully get this adopted in advance of reorg, so that we can also then tie in any new permit structure or fees or anything
Mhm.
to that. I haven't seen anything back from him yet. Landscape code rewrite is definitely low on the priority scale these days.
Mhm.
And then I think the community plan update kind of feeds back into the future projects and funding thing. So I prepared a couple of things. I'm sorry, Eileen, I didn't realize you weren't going to be here tonight, so there's a lot of paper. I'll leave it on your desk for you.
Okay.
You'll just have to trust us that what we're saying is true.
I don't know, Matt.
No, I have a reputation. So jumping off of the mayor's statements from the last time, I did a quick little thing. I'm gonna send this to Keaton because he got all jazzed up about it earlier this evening. I consolidated all of the objectives and actions from the community plan into a spreadsheet. And then I just did like a really rough sort through it and crossed off the things that are done, made comments on things that aren't done, and added
Cool.
feeds to things that I've accumulated in the last 2 weeks. So a couple of the things that the mayor had brought up as like potential things that we should be pursuing and trying to complete. And keep in mind too, nobody ever completes a comprehensive plan, but I hear what Bernie's saying and I understand it. So one of the things that you brought up was the greenway. Now this is something that everybody's been talking about for years, and it's always sort of in the back of everyone's mind, but no one's ever pursued it. So I went and I talked to Molly Vendura, who did our parks master plan. And I gave her a really sort of 10,000 foot view and said, write your own scope and let me know what you kind of think this would be, high order of magnitude. She knows how I talk, so she added extra hours in for meetings. So we can control that to a certain degree, but she kind of gave it a rough estimate of about 194 to 200 hours at her billing rate of 93. So she's saying that if we pursued what I think makes a lot of sense, which is essentially a design guideline for each of the roads that are identified as the primary green highway, so to speak, that's in the comprehensive plan right now. And that, for all intents and purposes, is Milton to Cayuga, up and through Island Park, up and around to Oak Grove, down Park, around to Academy, and then similarly like one street deep, down to Glen and around through the cemetery on Reese. It's a 2.8 mile circuit. Now, obviously not all 2.8 miles is, has sidewalks and street fronts that need to be addressed. Some of them are actually in the parks or parts of like, the parking lot here, things like that. But so I dialed it back a little bit, and it's about 1.7 miles worth of street frontage in various parts of the village. And what the comprehensive plan says about it is that we should be creating this sort of pathway that's, individualized and has more of a specific character, or maybe wayfinding signage, or, things of this nature. Some sort of a special concrete treatment or sidewalk, a wider sidewalk. Now, I will caution you, if you look at any of the images that are in the comprehensive plan, they're spectacularly optimistic by comparison to what I think the real right-of-way dimensions are. And that would be where I would want Molly, or a Molly-like person, to sort of come back and say, these are your opportunities along Milton. These are your opportunities along Academy, where you have really narrow right-of-ways or really wide right-of-ways. And maybe this one has a bigger sidewalk, this one just has a better concrete, or fill in the blank, right? So her fee would be about $18,000. And we can, again, she was shooting for the moon, so we can control that to a certain degree. But if we said, we'll just carry 18 for the moment. I took the survey numbers that Ben just got from Niagara Boundary for the road reconstruction, and we broke that down into a price per lineal foot of road, basically. So if we surveyed the 1.7 miles, it'd be somewhere in the range of $14,000 to $15,000. And I think we could control that cost too if we decided to only develop one side of the road, for instance. Like, just for argument's sake, let's say one side of Milton, the side that leads to the crosswalk is the one that gets built up as the green highway, so to speak. And the other side, it's not the redheaded stepchild, but it doesn't get all of the treatments, right? And then throwing $200 a lineal foot at sidewalk improvements, wayfinding, maybe some landscaping, fill in the blank, on an average over 1.7 miles, it's about $1 million to $1.2 million to get it all done. So in my mind's eye, that would never be a project that we would do in one whack. It would instead be something that we might time with the road improvements. So one of the documents in here, I took Ben's 5-year capital plan and I went through and I tucked in numbers based on the lineal footage of Greenway, so that you could sort of see what the impact on like a typical 5-year capital plan might be. So for example, 2024-25 would be the first year in the 5-year plan where we would be doing something on a street that's related to the Greenway. And that would be South Cayuga distance from Milton to basically Town Hall parking lot. So that would be about $100,000 add on top of a $473,000 a year. So we'd be tacking on 20% to the cost of the capital improvements for that year. But other years, would we be doing 4 or 5 or 6 of these at a time, we could be doubling or even tripling the capital improvements expenditure, which is why I got really excited when Keaton mentioned the TAP grant, because $400,000 would go a long way towards some of the bigger, more significant roads.
Yeah.
And from a time period point of view, it fits pretty nicely with the idea of having some sort of a design guideline, a plan in place that's vetted by the community already. And that when the design professional, Bill Shutt's office or whomever comes in to do the road improvement for that length of road, we hand them the design guidelines and say, this is what the expectations are. And then they'd be the ones doing the harder detail work. They might come back and say, well, we can't get a 6-foot sidewalk here. But the point is, you'd at least have a basis for discussion so that they could incorporate that work when the time comes. So from that perspective, if we wanted to pursue the idea of the green highway, or at least begin that process, we'd be looking at an expenditure probably in the range of about $30,000 worth of consultants fees. That would ultimately generate a document that becomes something that gets repeated and repeated, and that we can use for that TAP grant as well. So that was one. Another one that you mentioned.
So can you just hold, so we have like about 4 minutes
Oh,
until we start our board
let's
meeting.
come back
So
to that then.
let's just take a little recess here before we start, and we'll get into our board meeting on time.
Okay.
All right, thanks. All right. Running? Okay. All right, welcome everyone to the village board meeting for March 22nd, 2021. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by trustee Al Yates.
One last time.
One last time.
I'm gonna do Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Administrator Kindred, would you do the roll call, please?
Sure. Mayor Rogers,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Piazza,
Here.
Trustee Yates,
Here.
Trustee Etu,
Here.
Trustee Tori,
Here,
Trustee Greco.
Greco.
One of these days I'll get it right, Chip, I'm sorry.
I'm present via Zoom.
Okay, DPW General Crew Chief filling in.
I'm here via Zoom as well.
Deputy Treasurer Pasco.
Here.
Director of Community Development DePriest.
Here.
Okay, thank you. So we do have one very important proclamation this evening. Anyone care to guess what that proclamation might be about?
I don't know, Tom Frank.
No.
I miss him.
No. I miss me. All right, so proclamation, I will begin by reading this and then maybe we could get a picture, Keaton, afterwards.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Whereas trustee Al Yates left his family in Georgia to relocate to Western New York for work, but found his reason to stay in Buffalo when he met his future wife, Julie Merlot. And whereas Julie Merlot, a lifelong resident of Williamsville, introduced him to our community, where they have been both graciously devoted their time and talents for more than a decade. And whereas many people have speculated as to why he goes by Al, his middle name, as opposed to John, his birth name, just like the Paul Simon song, "You Can Call Me Al." And whereas the village board has worked with many people throughout our years of service, and we can honestly say that Al has been one of them. And whereas Al works harder than anyone we know, including as 5-time chairman of the Taste of Williamsville and as a member of the nonprofit Village Preservation Foundation, among many others, it is recognized that we're all in serious trouble after he leaves. And whereas Al has faithfully served as liaison to the Williamsville Business Association, and his presence will be sorely missed, as will his seat at every village bar, sipping a craft brew or a Tommy Ryder cocktail, all while offering us his Southern charm, a spot-on Scottish accent, and unforgettably snappy holiday attire. And now therefore be it resolved that in life there are takers and givers. Al and Julie are taking themselves from us, but we're gracious enough to give them a second chance to rethink the whole thing. And let them know that they always have a home in the village of Williamsville. So trustee Yates, I'd like to present this to you. And then if we could, I'd like to maybe get a picture. You can either do it up here or down there, whatever. Don't want to do it down there.
Up there? Whatever's easiest.
How about right in front of the dais and then you can get the kids. Oh, yes.
Yes,
Well,
it's about time.
well, once we take
Well,
something
you know
out.
what I wanted? Well, I know it's not the go yet, this is still in my car.
What are you doing with that? I didn't know.
Should I open this now or later?
A taste of Buffalo.
It's a taste of Buffalo. You can just.
Oh, nice.
Ah,
They don't have this in
foreshadowing.
Cleveland yet. Right?
So,
So you guys are awesome.
all right, so this is for you. So, and then you can fold that, we'll get a picture of all of that, that would be great.
Can you grab the bag by the top of
Like this. Yeah.
That'll be
the?
picture
1, 2, 3. One more for good measure. 1, 2, 3. All right. Facebook famous.
Thank you. Thank you for all your service. Thank you so much.
thank you, Al. I'm so sorry I'm not there. We miss you. We will miss you very, very much.
I'll miss you all.
Yeah.
There's a lot of you.
All right. So thank you to all who contributed to that proclamation as well.
Yeah, I can tell you did talk to some people, especially the Scottish part. Oh, you do that one. Oh, okay. Yeah, Scotty does come out sometimes and, when we have a tummy rodder or two, so. It's my alter ego.
All right, we'll move on to approval of minutes. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes for March 8th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Okay, so at this time, we are calling for a public hearing. So I will make a motion to open the public hearing for the tentative 2021-2022 village budget. So if you are joining us this evening and you have a comment or question as it pertains to the upcoming village budget, we ask that you state your name and address for the record. And Keaton, I'll let you kind of monitor that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Okay. So whoever would like to speak on behalf of the budget,
They can just raise their hand.
please go ahead and raise your hand. We do have a number of participants on this evening. Please use the raise hand function that is within Zoom, and we can call on you if you'd like to speak about the budget. While I wait for hands to be raised, I want to show everyone that the budget is available to view on the website. If you'd like, you can view it at www.walkablewilliamsville.com. Put your finger over government and go right down to budget. And you'll see a long line of all of our available budgets to view, and then you just click on tentative budget. And it's a large document, so give it a moment and it will load. And you can view where the board is right now with their budget. Would anybody like to speak? I have no hands raised. Nobody offering.
All right.
Okay, all right, so we will then, I will make a motion first to close the public hearing for the tentative 2021-2022 village budget.
Second, but I think we should have something for the record, that there were no comments made by the public at today's public hearing.
Good point. So I had a second from Deputy Mayor Piotr, so all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, so the next steps for the budget then, Judy,
Is to approve it at the next.
at the next meeting?
Yes.
Right.
First
Finalize all
meeting
the
in
numbers.
April.
First
Yes,
meeting in April.
April 12th.
Yeah.
And then we submit it to the state.
Okay, good. All right, so we're on schedule to get it in time too, which is good, because they need it by May 1st. All right, okay, good. All right, so next we'll move into the suspension of rules for public participation. So this is the time where if you have a question or a comment or a concern and you'd like to address the village board, this is your time to do so. So we just ask that you do state your name and address for our records. And Keaton will monitor that. So I'll make a motion at this point to open up the suspension of rules for public participation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay,
Okay, at this time, if you'd like, please, use the raise hand function through Zoom and let us know that you'd like to speak on any village-related topic. And, feel free to address the board. While we wait, Mayor, did you want to maybe offer what you spoke about at the work session regarding the meeting house? Maybe some of these people are on for an update.
oh, sure, yeah, I can do that. Mr. DePriest asked that I offer an update in case there are those on here this evening who are concerned about the pending or the discussion of the sale of the meeting house. So I had a conversation on Friday with Supervisor Kolpa, and I posed the question as to whether or not the town of Amherst would be interested in purchasing the meeting house. And Supervisor Kulpa expressed an interest. Of course, you know, he will be taking it back to the rest of his board members for further discussion. But in the meantime, we did have all of the documents relevant to that, such as the appraisal for the meeting house, which came in at $440,000. So that document, among the deeds and the covenants and all the survey and such that we're getting together for this building, those have all been sent over to the town of Amherst for their review. So once again, I just want to stress there was an interest, you know, by Supervisor Kulpa, and you know, no final decision has been made, but very optimistic because I do think it would be a win-win for everyone concerned, whether you were one of the folks who was in favor of selling the meeting house or you were opposed to the sale of it. I think it's a nice, it would be a nice, you know, way to end that. So, okay.
Without further ado, we do have Nick Roth who would like to speak. Nick, if you could please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Keaton. Nick Roth, 135 Oak Grove. I just wanted to congratulate the board on pursuing the idea of selling the meeting house. With the Zoom technology and being out of town a lot, I miss a lot of these sessions, and I'm not sure I'm always current. And it was very encouraging to hear the remarks from Mayor Rogers about possibly the town of Amherst being interested in purchasing it. I do have a question. I heard during the work session that the village acquired the property in 1978, I believe. And I'm just curious if that had if there were any grant funds used to acquire that property back then. I do not imagine anybody on this current board was, well, Basil, you're probably maybe the only one that was around at that point.
No, I wasn't around, I wasn't involved at all. But,
okay.
By the way.
So I guess my ultimate question is if there was any type of grant money used to acquire it, would that have to be repaid if the village divests itself?
No, so we you know, uncovered, you know, all of this history, and no, there's no grant funding that we would own back, you know, going back to 1978, or for that matter, any of the recent grant funding
The purchase was for $1.
It was.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Even better. Okay. Okay. Well, I certainly hope this prospective buyer comes through. It would make it a lot easier and a cleaner transaction. But if not, I hope you pursue rigorously the sale of the property. And I do have one other question. I understand that the village will no longer have a parking enforcement officer.
That is correct.
Right.
What can anybody offer the underlying reason for that decision?
Well, we furloughed the parking enforcement officer when COVID hit, because as you can imagine, you know, there really wasn't much enforcement by way, certainly of the business district to, you know, to have. And so we had a decision then when we were discussing our budget in, what was that, late February, that whether or not we felt we wanted to bring back our parking enforcement officer. And after looking at the numbers, we decided as a board that we weren't going to bring a parking enforcement officer back.
By the way, Nick, there were no complaints during that year plus concerning parking problems on Main Street. So that, and the impetus really was back to the early 90s when the WBA pushed to have some kind of control of parking on Main Street. And I'm not sure what the changes were over the last 25 years or so, but apparently people find parking and it hasn't become an obnoxious or a chaotic situation in the absence of a person. So we felt that, well, we're going to go forward and not have one and take a look at it again next year.
Yes, and Basil, I do agree with that. And as many of you are aware, I'm also a member of the Traffic and Safety Committee. So we look at this, and also as a resident on Oak Grove, I can do a litmus litmus test of the cars parked on Oak Grove and Park Street, how busy a lot of the restaurants are on Main Street. And due to the geometry of the intersection at Park and Oak Grove, it gets kind of creative there. And then you have people exiting their parking lot, such and such. Again, all maybe outside of the purview of the parking officer. I was just a little bit surprised to hear that the position had been eliminated, but I thank you for the answer.
Yeah, I think it only created a very small positive on the budget. If I remember, I don't remember what it was. It wasn't a lot. So it was kind of almost a wash. And I think Keaton and I did discuss it at the WBA board meeting with the directors board, and there was not really opposition that I recall from that meeting. So we did talk to the business community to see what their thoughts were as well. So it was, you know, that's kind of where we landed.
Okay, thank you. And I want to say thank you to Al for all you did for the various committees and the village. You will be missed.
Thanks, Nick. I've enjoyed doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Here's a fun fact as we move on. If the village were to do that same deal today that they did in 1978, buying the meeting house for $1, it would cost about $3.90 today. So still a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
We would need grant money.
Funny.
I was wondering what inflation would have been, in today's dollars.
Back then.
Would anybody else from the public like to speak to the village board about anything village related? Anybody at all? Okay, we have nobody.
Okay, so with that then, I'll make a motion to close the suspension of rules for public participation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll get right into reports and resolutions. So I will make I'd like to make a resolution to pass items number 1, number 2, and number 3 as they appear on the agenda. They are basically budget transfers, budget amendments, and payroll and vouchers.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think the dates are wrong, yes. The dates for the payroll and vouchers, we're
I see
gonna
that.
change that to
3.
3/1 through 3/16. Sorry about that, I didn't catch it.
Mine does say
Oh, the
3/1
payroll
through
covering?
3/16.
Oh, it does?
The
Yeah.
top says.
Oh, the
Yeah.
top page doesn't.
Oh, the
It's a
top
payroll
page. Oh,
coverage.
yeah, that's
All right,
The resolution
that's fine.
itself does.
Yeah.
Oh.
yeah, the resolution's correct though, so we're good.
Okay,
Unless the payroll portion is incorrect, it says 314 on the
No,
payroll
that's
line.
right.
That's correct?
yeah, so we go
Okay.
from the beginning of that to the end of the vouchers.
Yeah, so you're good.
Okay, resolution number 4, resolve that Christopher Holbert of 66 Simpson Street, Tonawanda is hereby appointed as motor equipment operator in the Department of Public Works effective March 29th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, okay. And I have, do I have anything to report? So do we talk about the fire department? They have a new sign out front. Did everybody notice it yet? or-
Very nice.
Oh, it's very nice, yeah, so next time you're driving by, in particular at night, take a look at it. I feel like there's something else for the fire department that I might be missing. The new vehicles are all out. The news rescue,
We got the new rescue for.
right, okay. Right, so that's it for me for reports. So next for his reports and resolutions is Deputy Mayor Piazza.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment. Just before I came here, there was a major fire in the garage next door to me.
Oh,
And it's amazing how efficient and professional and rapid the Winslow Fire Department responded. It was a full-blown fire. Everything, the garage and all its contents obviously are destroyed. Fairly close to my deck, fairly close to his deck, but they got in there pretty quickly enough to probably have no damage. I didn't look at it, but no damage to either of our decks. I have a backyard full of junk yet from the fire, but that's okay. I mean, they had to open up one side of the garage and get at it, but just a real accolades to these volunteers who protect all of us all the time. That they got in there quickly with their equipment between the police closing the street down and the fire department showing up with various bumpers and everything. Terrific crew and accolades to them. Outside of that, I really have nothing else to report. I'm still looking for a chairperson for the Arts and Culture Committee. And I have no resolution, so that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Piazza. Next for his reports and resolutions, one last time, it is Trustee Yates.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it is hard to say one last time. You know, I'll just say one report, the Cultural Conversations Committee did meet last week, and we'll discuss about what they had asked for as I leave in a work session. We go back to work session later, but it's a great group of people, and I hope that whoever replaces me will take that committee and run with it as well. You know, I really started in this village actually with the farmers market in 2006 in my first volunteer gig. And after that, I was in an establishment called the Glen Park Tavern, surprisingly. And the owner, Ellie Brennauer, she's still on. It's her fault that I'm here today. So she put her arms around me and my wife and said, "We think you should run the Taste of Williamsville." And I said, "Really? You think we can do this?" So so we sat down, we talked, and then the rest was the Taste of Williamsville. Then when we went through dissolution, I actually helped design the websites and stuff so that both groups could be represented to basically inform the public. That's kind of what I've always been about, is I love this community, and that's the reason I continue to do it. And then after dissolution, when we decided as a village to stay a village, I got asked to fill a vacancy, and I came on this board, and it's been a lot of fun. I think the mayor then, Brian Culpa, for introducing me to this, and it's been a labor of love, and it is sad to leave, but I'm also excited to see where it goes, and I think change is always good for all of us. But yeah, it's been an awesome ride. You know, I have to thank, you know, our former administrator, Linda Ewell, Judy, Kelly. You know, Kelly remembers me the first time I came and put in my permit for the Taste of Williamsville, not knowing what the heck I was doing, because I kind of just got handed it. So she worked with me, and we did that for years. So I've done a lot. I've touched a lot. The business community, you know, all the restaurants that have worked with me, and we stood out there in the heat and slept food and stuff, and it's been a fun ride. And I know that this community has what it needs to continue, and I'm excited to be a part of it and to have been a small part of what we've done. And we've all done this as a community. All the committees over the years, I think I've served on just about all of them at some point or another, and liaison to them. So to each of you, you know, it's been an honor to serve with the board members. Basil is, you know, is such a great mentor to me, and has taught me to be the trustee that I am. I've certainly served with a lot of great people, and to single people out, but you know, Mayor Rogers, you know, you're a great testament to taking change and running with it, and questioning things that we should all be doing as elected officials. You know, we have a duty to do, and it's not always a pretty duty sometimes to question and do things that, you know, this is what we should be doing, and it's not always the funnest job to do at times. Your heart's in it, but it's not easy sometimes. And Matt, you bring a lot to this board with regards to land use. I always think that every board should have a land use person involved at this table, and you certainly bring a lot to that. And we are forever in debt to you as well. So I could go on and on about a lot of people. So some people wonder why I'm leaving. You know, it's really for my job, for my family. The timing as far as I'm leaving, you know, I'm a resident of the state and the village until the 20th, and when our house actually closes. So that's the reason I chose the date that I did, because I still respect this board. I want to make sure that my committees have a liaison as long as they can. And so while we may leave for Cleveland on the 8th, of April. I'll be back to close my house and do final other things. So I don't think anything past that would be really serving my community and those I represent. So thank you all for the kind proclamation, and it's been an honor. And I only have one other thing, and that's my last and final resolution. So whereas the Village of Williamsville Tree Board's mission is to advise and support matters that impact the beauty, biological integrity, and environmental quality of the community through its stewardship of the village urban forest. And whereas Arbor Day is celebrated during this time, and whereas we recognize that in order to provide a high quality of life in Williamsville, each one of us must be good stewards of our air, water, land, flora, and fauna. And whereas we recognize that actions to protect and preserve trees through education, partnership, and positive action should be encouraged. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Williamsville Board of Trustees hereby proclaims that Arbor Day shall be celebrated in the Village of Williamsville on Saturday, June 5th, 2021, including celebration activities and recognition.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And one last thing to that, Ellie Grenauer wanted to remind everybody that the first farmers market will be June 5th, which will be in conjunction with Eileen's Earth Day celebration and also the Arbor Day where we give away the free trees. So come out and grab your free trees and put in a tree, and let's move on. So I think that's all I have. Sorry, I was kind of long-winded tonight.
No, very nice.
None at all, yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right, well, thank you, trustee Yates. Next for her reports and resolutions is trustee Torrey.
Thank you, Mayor. Al, that was very touching. You made me very emotional right now. But I want to thank you for your service and all the time and effort you put into the village. You were an amazing asset and you'll be very, very missed. Thank you, Al and Julie as well. And I'm happy to be back in the village and doing Earth Day. I try to remember when our last Earth Day, our first one was, and it must have been more than 10 years ago because I was a co-founder with another village resident. And the very first Earth Day we had was collecting car tires at the DPW. And from, yeah, if you can imagine that, in pouring rain. And from there forward, every year we expanded and made it better. And I'm proud and happy to say that we're having Earth Day and Arbor Day this year on June 5th. And it'll be a wonderful holiday, including the market, and everybody's invited. So therefore, I'm reading this resolution. Whereas the Village of Williamsville Environmental Advisory Commission's mission is to advise and support matters that impact the beauty, biological integrity, and environmental quality of the community. And whereas we recognize that in order to provide a high quality of life in Williamsville, each one of us must be good stewards of our air, water, land, flora, and fauna. And whereas we recognize that actions to protect and preserve the environment through education, partnership, and positive action should be encouraged. And whereas the Village of Williamsville wishes to recognize the 51st anniversary of Earth Day. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Village of Williamsville Board of Trustees hereby proclaims Earth Day to be celebrated in the Village of Williamsville on Saturday, June 5, 2021, with a variety of educational Earth-focused activities for the community.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, trustee Torrey. And last but not least, for his reports and resolutions is trustee Etu.
So jumping on board with everybody else, giving Al accolades, yada, yada, yada. I just have to say that I wouldn't be sitting here if it weren't for Al Yates, and I'll never forgive him for that.
I know, I do. I feel it every day, yes. I'm glad I took the risk though.
Yeah.
So my resolutions this evening.
That wasn't exactly like a warm and fuzzy.
No, it wasn't warm and fuzzy. He knows
I think I actually dragged both of you guys into this. So for that, I'm
You
sorry,
did.
but I'm
Oh.
forever grateful.
Yeah, you
No, I
did.
mean, there's really nothing more that I can say, except that, you know, Al has managed to, you know, make himself a real staple in the community. And it's like, now we got the mill on the emblem. We should have Al's face on the letterhead or something. And like, he's a fixture, and he can leave, but he'll never really be gone. So
My heart will always be here, seriously.
he'll come back. He will. So my resolutions this evening. Resolved that the village clerk is hereby authorized and instructed to publish notice of a public hearing to be held on Monday, April 26, 2021 at 7:30 PM for the purpose of hearing all persons interested in commenting on the Historic Preservation Commission's proposed designation as local landmark, the stone wall at 127 Garrison Road.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And my second resolution, I'm very excited about. These two women were very active and helpful with the playground build this past year, and have graciously volunteered to join our Parks Committee as well as serve as co-chairs. So resolved that Lauren Schellinger of 400 North Forest Road, Williamsville, and Carrie DeQuinn of 271 Reese Street, Williamsville, are hereby appointed to Parks Committee through the end of the 2020-2021 official village year. And further resolved that Lauren Schellinger and Carrie DeQuinn will act as co-chairs for the Parks Committee through the end of the 2020-2021 official village year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And as always, thank you to them and all of our volunteers.
Okay, so that's, you're all set then?
Yep.
Can I have one more word? One thing I meant to say was.
Well, no, I might need to take a vote on that.
Do we need to go off agenda?
We have to go off agenda. I forgot an announcement. So what are you gonna do, fire me? No, but all kidding aside, I wanted to say, if you want to change your community and be a part of your community and make it what it is, you have to volunteer and be involved. So I'm excited to see people looking forward to potentially running for the upcoming election. But even if you're not looking to be an elected official, by volunteerism, we get a lot done. We're a 1 square mile, we're 5,000 residents. You can have such an impact on your community and make it what it is. So, don't be afraid to get involved if like it's too much of a commitment. I always say to everybody that's been on any of the committees I've been on, give what you can give, but get out and do something. Get off your duff, put your phone down and get busy. Thank you.
Okay, thank
One more
you.
thing. I'm just kidding.
Thank you, trustee Yates, yet again. And we'll get into staff reports. Administrator Kindred.
Nothing for me.
Okay, Community Development Director DePriest.
I just have one quick thing, and it is the fact that we are getting some really good contest entries for our Easter egg scavenger hunt. Just want to remind the community that the contest ends next week. So you still have about 9 days and at least 3 good weather days coming up to get out there and find these eggs, which are just laminated paper. If you find those eggs and you write it down on the sheet, which you see here on the screen, you can download it here by visiting walkablewilliamsville.com, or you can get one here at Village Hall. And you just write down wherever you found whichever number egg, and you find 10 of them, and you submit it to us. You have a chance to get an Easter basket delivered right to your home. So thank you to those who have already submitted their entries. We have last count, we had about 21. So that's not bad for about a week. So we'd love to see more. So please send them in.
That's really a clever idea.
Yes, Amy Alexander of the Youth and Rec Committee came up with it and really orchestrated everything along with some help from her fellow members.
Well, thank her for the board.
Yeah.
It was a great idea.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people out too these past couple of days with those sheets and kind of walking and looking for the, the eggs. So I actually need a sheet. So before I leave here tonight, I need to grab one.
I mean, I'm not going to give any away, but there's some near Village Hall, so they're all over the place. But I do want to stress though, they are only within the village boundaries.
Yes.
So don't go anywhere outside of the village boundaries. Don't go past Union Road or, past Will South.
Mhm.
All right, that's
Right.
it.
Great, thank you. Deputy Treasurer Pasco, do you have anything to report?
Nothing, Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Crew Chief Villanin?
No reports for the board meeting. Just want to say, Al, it's been a real honor. You definitely have left an imprint on the village, and good job. And good luck to you and your wife. And I hope the people you're going to be in the community is aware of what they're getting into.
Thanks, Ben. I've enjoyed working with you.
Attorney Greco? Oh,
No,
Can I just actual report that? I'm sorry.
It was breaking up.
The dam gates will be going in. Sorry, I'm on my Bluetooth.
Yeah, that's better.
Can you
I'm
hear me
sorry,
now?
what was that? I missed it. Oh, the dam gates went in?
Dam gates will be going in this week.
Okay,
So,
will be coming, okay.
Just so that all the business, everyone knows that. And that's all I got. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, now Attorney Greco?
no report. I also would just like to say how much I've enjoyed working with Al over the years. He will be missed, and good luck to you and Julie.
Thanks, Chip.
Okay, so we have no executive session this evening. So what I'm going to do is make a motion to adjourn the meeting this evening. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And what we're going to do is we're gonna hop back in where we left off at work session with trustee E2.
Okay, so, so then looking at a couple of the other things that the mayor had suggested as, possible projects that were looking to be done from the comp plan and what, could we pursue them and stuff. I chased down Frank Cirillo at the DOT about striping parking on Main Street. And I asked him a couple of questions, and his comment was that the DOT does not stripe spaces for municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't prohibit it, but they're not going to do it. He doesn't know and doesn't remember whether or not the Clough Harbor investigated the idea of putting them in or not, or whether they were just omitted outright. He indicated that it is possible to do it, that it could be done either by village forces or a contractor, as long as you have a highway work permit. But he also said that what was published as the estimate, given its vintage, is probably quite low. It was like $3,000 to $5,000 to paint the spaces. It probably, so I just doubled it. Let's call it $6,000 to $10,000. Now, I asked if we could get our hands on the design drawings.
Okay, so real quick, so after I had set my wish list out, which included that, I found out from Judy that when we looked at striping these spots, it actually took away.
Yes,
Yeah, I was
that's what I was
gonna
gonna say. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Is I
Which
have
didn't
this,
know that.
I have this vague memory of this conversation
I don't
and or,
Yeah.
yeah. that
Yeah,
that
we
you had-
talked to Ben.
Yeah, so.
Because really what happens is that like a parking space is supposed to be 20 feet long,
Mhm,
and you can arguably fit 3 cars in the length of 2,
mhm.
or 3 cars in length of 4, or whatever it is. So, or 4 in the length of 3. So the point is, yes, you do run out of parking pretty quickly if you leave it a little bit more Wild West, so
Right.
people can scoot it in. So that would be one that I would just cross off.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, there was another one. Oh, so the grand staircase in Glen Park. So I haven't talked to anybody who, and Basil, I don't know if you remember or anything, but I don't know why this wasn't incorporated into like the Spring Street project unless it was just sort of a budgetary thing. I do know that the original location was essentially adjacent to the mill, which is where the big green infrastructure technique is now.
Mhm.
So really the only viable location left would be at the corner of Spring and Rock.
Mhm.
Which I also know the mound of earth that's there
Mhm.
is actually, I believe it spoils from the dredging of one of the ponds. So it's not really good material to build on. So really rough numbers, you're probably talking about $20,000 for a design professional with surveying and everything, and probably $250,000 for the stairs.
Oh, sure.
Definitely put that on the
So you
back
want to put that on the back burner too?
burner. Yeah, I do.
Okay, okay, so that's cool. So then you can see, if you strike those from the list, that comp plan wise, it's fairly, we're pretty close to done with a lot of stuff. Now, there's a couple of things that are ongoing. There's a couple of things that might be, Eileen, there's like a discussion in here about the idea of trying to create a better or improved connectivity between the north end of Glen Park and the south end of Amherst State Park. There's a lot of really rough trails and stuff in along the
Right.
creek. I don't know that anyone's ever really tried to drill down into that and decide if it made sense to, if there was grant money to put in like boardwalks or make it handicap accessible or anything like that, or if that was something that, say, the Glen Park.
Well,
was interested
it
in.
is in the master plan for the Amherst State Park through Amherst.
Oh,
But
is it?
honestly, Matt, a lot of that area is flooded. Despite, pathways or whatever they decide, boardwalks, it's really not suitable, period. Anybody who walks down that area knows that. So,
Okay, well, so then that would be one that, again, it's kind of like, it was a good idea. It seemed good at the time, but not so great.
It's not so great.
Yeah, there's a couple others in here. We don't have to go over them tonight, but,
Well, I appreciate you doing that.
yeah, there's a couple of like economic development things in there that I literally have no idea how you would even start that conversation. That might be something for smarter minds than ours. But, so then the last thing was, and I had hoped to have a conversation with Carrie over the weekend, but she had a family emergency and she wasn't available, but we were talking about like sort of earlier in budget, we were talking about what kind of projects we were prioritizing for the parks. And the Parks Master Plan had listed a bunch of options, and one of them was a picnic shelter in South Lawn. We have just the gazebo there. We kind of polled the Parks Committee. Everyone generally kind of agreed that it wanted to be roughly equivalent to the small gazebo pavilion we have in Island Park. So like 6 picnic table size. So that's the smallest that's available in a prepackaged thing. That's 16 by 24. I'm waiting for numbers back from like a provider of those, but really rough numbers. You're talking about something in the range of 70 to 80. And I'm just ratioing square footages here. So it might be a little up, a little down from there. The location that was offered in the South Lawn Master Plan was generally in the vicinity of the section house, kind of where the basketball court is now. And the premise being is that it's kind of the center of the wagon wheel, that if you're renting it, you could be using an athletic fields to the north, you could be participating in an event, at the depot to the south, and it also kind of centers it on the neighborhood at the end of Milton. To achieve that location would mean that we'd also then have to relocate the tennis courts and the basketball court, which is also, it was always discussed as part of the master plan as well. If you look at the graphic that I gave you, this is the, one of the alternatives for the South Lawn Park, and it shows both the tennis court and the basketball court located up along Village Square Lane, closer to the parking lot. There was a desire to include a pickleball court, which is kind of like a smaller tennis / full-size ping pong. And in playing around with the survey and trying to make these things fit, I think, and coming back to, I think Nick Roth had a comment about the orientation of the tennis court, wants to be turned and everything. So playing around with that, it seems like they want to be more sort of arrayed along South Lawn than on Village Square Lane. Happy to do that, but the knock-on effect of that is that until such time as it is relocated or we decide to forego it altogether, it would curtail the use of the softball court completely. If we put in fenced, paved athletic fields, basketball and tennis in that corner and demolish the ones at the end of Milton, we would not be able to, you'd be into your for the existing softball. Now you'll notice that
Well, it's been-
it is a desire to relocate it closer to
Right.
Milton. And
Right.
again, this is all a shell game of, we gotta move one tile to move the next, to move the next. So the point is that if we made that decision to pursue that, we'd be simultaneously making the decision to take the softball field offline for an indeterminate period of time until it could be relocated.
But at some point though, I mean, if we are gonna relocate it, that is gonna have to happen. Regardless.
Oh, exactly. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the thing. I guess my point is to simply make the point that anything we do in South Lawn Park is going to have growing pains.
Absolutely, but.
Growing pains that are
and-
gonna last more than a heartbeat. And so just as far as the community is concerned, that they understand that these are temporary inconveniences
Mhm.
to achieve a longer view.
Right, I mean, and there's no way around it, because even if you do an in-home construction project, you have a mess while you're doing it, but you do it because your eye is on the end result of having something, nicer and more appealing.
Right.
So, I mean, this isn't, it's just, there's no way around it. I mean,
Right.
it's gonna happen.
Well, I'll say this as a resident of that area and somebody who uses that park quite a bit. There's nobody really playing on that field nowadays, other than cricket, which cricket can be played anywhere over there. And the counties play cricket on that field now. There's a group of Indian guys that play over there on a regular basis. So I think that, I agree. I don't think you're gonna disrupt somebody's practice, because I don't see people practicing on it, so.
Do they use the infield or I just thought they were in the soccer field area.
They're kind of in the, where you have the soccer field area now.
I see.
They kind of use part of it there because it's compact and it's kind of fairly level.
Mhm.
So they play in that general area, but they don't
And-
play on the bases because
And
you
that would
don't
still
play
be,
cricket that way.
that would still be available. I mean, the thing is that
Absolutely.
the infield wouldn't necessarily be disturbed. It would just, it would make for really awkward play, because
Yes.
basically the third baseline is a basketball court.
Right. You might want to use it for T-ball, basically, and that was,
Yeah.
that's all you use it for, which is fine in the interim. That was my point, was that the disruption you're gonna create by doing so is it's not gonna really disrupt anybody who's currently using it now.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you this, there's a lot of people who use tennis, and there's a lot of people who play basketball, so to have those facilities upgraded and better, I think you get a win-win, and the cricket players can still play as well, so.
Right. So then to that end, then right now, based on the estimate that we got from Molly for the tennis court and the basketball court, these are really rough numbers. The total aggregate sum would be about $153,000 for brand new athletic courts for those features.
No, and that tennis court, does that include the fencing around it? No. Oh, net fencing, it does.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So I'm gonna have a conversation with the Parks Committee and everything, and I've been trying to draw out some opinions, and everyone so far has just been like, yeah, it all sounds great. Yes, we should invest in South Lawn. Yeah, that's great. and everything. So, but I want to get a little bit better direction. But in my head, the first, we invested in Island Park. We've invested a lot in Garrison over the years. South Lawn, needs some love. And I think the first big thing is to get those athletic fields out of that, because then we can start to clear things out. We can start to reconnect the parks. We can start to see things again. And it also has the effect of taking some of the noisier and more disruptive athletic activities away from the neighborhood, away from the kids' playground, and gives it it's a safe and non-disruptive space.
So, yeah.
Just a stupid question. Is the basketball court about where the current bathroom is?
No.
No,
bathroom
it's,
is-
I'm gonna end up kind of stacking these things, Basil, so that they're arrayed more down South
Yeah.
Lawn. as
No,
opposed
we're
to-
not gonna move the bathroom.
No, the
That's
bathroom will
not-
stay
the
put.
bathroom's gonna stay where it is,
But it's
yeah.
not.
Yeah, it's not really shown on here.
Is it right about where the number 16 is, actually?
No,
No,
it's
it's right off the
kinda-
lot there.
It's
Right
more
off
like
the
where the
parking
tree
lot.
is,
Yeah,
Mhm.
where that tree is by the parking lot.
and kind of where number 17 is. Number 17 is the gazebo relocated, was a suggestion, but I understand that it's in pretty rough shape, and we'd end up probably rebuilding it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that gazebo might, I don't know, that roof
think
is
it's
looking
seen
kind
as
of
it
bad. I think that, that might be beyond repair.
Yeah.
But, okay, so I think, if you have that cost, roughly, 153, and then you said we had a shelter at about 70.
70 to 80. yeah.
Okay,
So you're
so-
talking to
2:20, 2:30, okay. So, you know, these could be 3 big items, big park improvements that we could realize within the next year to start working on getting these together. And like you said, there's going to be inevitably some growing pains, but at some point we need to pull the trigger and get heading in that direction rather than continually, you know, talking about it. We need to do action now, right? And I think we've got the funding and we've talked about, you know, the Parks 2025 vision. So I think the time now is to get this going.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
I
Yeah,
agree.
so I just wanted to, you know, have that conversation and see if, you know, because we haven't adopted our budget yet. Obviously, a large sum of this is already budgeted, but then there are other things, like you're talking about the fencing for the dog park.
Right.
You're talking about, you know, do we pursue a consultant for the design guidelines for the greenway? Do we pursue a consultant for the comp plan update? And so like these numbers start to add up. They're all kind of, I mean, generally they're all bouncing around that $30,000 number, right? So where do we best put our funding, for the best bang for the buck? You know, just for everybody to understand where we're at with the comp plan RFPs. So we got 8 proposals, we got lots of feedback. Tom Amherst provided feedback, and it boiled down to 3 names, and the proposals range up from 68,000 to 90,000, and either a year to 16 months for schedule for those things. So arguably, you could also slice those proposals in half and say 30-30 or 30-45, whatever. Or as the mayor was mentioning earlier, I can have another conversation with Dan Howard and the planning department and see if there are things, if there are tasks in this RFP that the town planning department can help us with without having to do a lot of the GIS mapping and the community, you know, outreach, you know, meetings and things like that. And see if, or with a slimmed down version of that, so that we can save tens of thousands of dollars on that, on those other efforts. And because our comp plan is not that old, kick the can on pursuing a formal update for a year or 2, with the premise that maybe we're still picking up some of the things that are left in the comp plan that we currently have and trying to clean up those things that we were looking for a professional to provide us guidance with.
I think that's a great way of looking at it. And I think that, you know, I think we have this momentum that's begun with the parks and, you know, a pretty aggressive, you know, picture our parks 2025. And, you know, time's ticking, it's already 2021. So I think that if we can kind of keep our focus on that and keep going in that direction, I have no reason to doubt that, you know, we can complete that by 2025 as we anticipated. And, you know, not get sidetracked with some of these other projects, you know, so that may be for a future board then to pick up, because we've completed the parks. So then a future board could pick up maybe the Greenway, or they can pick up, you know, whatever other projects on the existing comp plan haven't been completed, and or they can also pick up updating the next comp plan, so. All right, any other comments on that discussion?
I think it's great. I know it's not part of the discussion. There's a gentleman who's requesting to speak regarding the dog park. I know it's a little out of the ordinary, out of order, but I don't know what he would like to say.
Was he not on during public expression?
He was not, no. He was in and out. I don't know if he was having some connection issue.
I'll tell you what, let's let trustee E2 finish up and then, sure, yeah, that's fine.
I just wondered because we were talking about parks. So.
Yeah, that's fine. I want to let trustee E2 finish.
Well, so I guess, I mean, I'm more or less done. I guess my question is, we need to understand sort of what dollar values we have left.
No, for our budget going forward, yeah.
For the parks.
The parks.
And for this budget cycle. So I know we had some room left over.
I don't know if Judy has those numbers this evening, so we might need to keep this open.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's my question.
I don't have the parks numbers yet. There's some wiggle room because of the furlough of employees during COVID. So we have approximately $22,000 there. We saved a lot of money in our insurance this past years, which I didn't know that was going to happen when we budgeted last year. So there's approximately 30,000 there.
Okay.
So there's 52.
52.
And then there's some other small things. And then on the other side, our legal fees our opinions are very high, but we also have contingency that we can hopefully draw on that to cover that.
And we still have our union negotiation
We
to
still-
add into that.
yeah, and then we also have our revenue side, we're close to our budgeted number, but as of right now, we haven't hit our budgeted number, so I don't want to say that, oh, we have,
Yeah, no.
you know, so much left,
Assume we don't get another dollar.
right?
Right.
So if we didn't get another dollar, we'd be okay, but we do know we're gonna get more, so
Sure. I just meant.
we're
to-
looking pretty good for this year. There should be some extra, monies available.
Okay, because, well, and then also with our budget for next year, we came in with a little cushion and we went out with a bigger cushion. And we haven't reconciled I haven't seen the reconciliation of like the sewer fund and the balancing act and all that, but I'm assuming there's still some cushion there that's unallocated.
Well, that's what we've got to see. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's my point is that like, I'd like to see what, like it's 10 cents here and 20 cents there, and we can aggregate that, because then, we're talking about $25,000 worth of dog yard fence, and we're talking about maybe, say $30,000 worth of consultants fees for something or whatever, and it's like, what can we pack in this year that we haven't historically been able to do?
Right.
And we should know what that is, so that, 6 or 8 months from now, when I say, okay, we want to do this, and someone says, well, we didn't budget for that.
Well, I think too, we know that through the last federal funding for COVID, is there going to be some things that we could use for that money to be reimbursed for that portion that would actually give us revenue back that we had to spend for COVID this year? Just a question. There could be a portion of that too, that.
The money that is coming down now, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
The CARES Act or the Rescue Act?
The CARES.
The CARES or whatever the recent one was.
It's called CARES, isn't it CARES
But that
Rescue or
was
something?
those
No,
monies
the
are very
recent-
specifically-
The recent one is the Recovery Act. That's the one that has the money for the state and local governments.
We don't know how much we're getting yet. The town is allocated at $15.3 million. Now, the villages have not been told what their allocation is, but from what I understand, it's going to be based on HUD allocations, CDBG. What the town has told me in the past, the village gets approximately 7%. So 7% of that 15.3 is just over $1 million. It can be used for sewer projects.
It should be used for sewer projects.
So we have a huge sewer project that we need to do. We're hoping to get like a $6 million CFA, which is a 75-25, I believe. And hopefully, if we do get it, this recovery money will pay our share. And so we would have a no cost to our residents. But that's what we're hoping for.
Right.
Of course, $1 million is not 25% of 6 million.
No, but we
There'd be a
also
large
have,
chunk towards it.
but we also have the $1 million current, I think it's a WQIP grant, Keaton, is there?
Yes.
But it's an 80-20 where we pay 80% of that. So, but between that, and if we get the CFA, the cost to the residents will be minimal.
That's
Very
spectacular.
difficult.
Yeah,
That's-
so
Don't
that
don't
money's
wanna rock
kind-
that boat at all.
yeah, so that money's kind of, that's where that money should be
That's what
going.
I'm thinking, based on what I read, what you can use it for, that's a very good start.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I'm good with that. Okay.
Absolutely. like that.
All right, so
That's it
you
for
put, I think she's gonna have it just at our next meeting. Maybe we can have those numbers more clearly so we can kind of finalize.
Hopefully we'll know more too on that front, and then I'll know more too where our revenues are and our expenses are, and what we can project our expenses to be for the rest of the year.
Okay, sounds good. All right, anything else?
That's it.
Okay, so Keaton, you wanna allow?
Sure, yeah. James Amers, Marisi, sorry. If you
Yes,
Just state your name and address for the record.
James Emery's 114 Garden Parkway. We're right on the border at the village. New residents. We moved in 2019 June. And from what I understand, the dog park, which is, I just had a couple quick questions. I'm sorry I had some tech issues. Thank you guys very much for giving me a second. We moved in and it wasn't disclosed to us. So we found out very recently with the letter in the mailbox, and appreciate the disclosure. I just wanted to know if that is finalized to the degree of any ability. I know a neighbor stopped by with a petition tonight and asked us to sign. Is that finalized to the degree of there's no voice left to be had? If not, is there a resource for information for things like, there's a family of 9 deer that live here that are almost like a local find, that people come and they walk the bike path just to see the family of deer. Have they been rehomed, or have they been considered? The borders where I see them bordering off in my backyard, it says 60 feet and there's quite a few spaces that aren't 60 feet. So how tight are they being on that regulation? Is there any added foliage besides the chain link fence? As obviously noise and things like the investment we put in our own backyard and for our own dogs. I'm a dog lover, a huge advocate of public space for dog parks. And if all this stuff's been answered, just I guess the resource, and if we still have a chance to be a voice, where and how we would do that.
So to answer, and I may miss some of your questions, but I'll do the best I can here. So resolution was put forth in April 2019, where this board voted on it to approve that space for this use. We're not changing fundamentally the use of that space. That has always been considered park space. At one time, it housed exercise equipment, exercise stations. Those became dilapidated and were torn out, and then the area has pretty much just been in, the natural state since. So what we're doing is we're adding a park amenity, if you will, to that location. The flags are kind of were loosely placed, I would say. I did say in that rendering that it was a 60 feet buffer. So that would be a natural vegetation that's within that 60 feet, we would hope to keep and remain. There are some dead ash trees throughout that area. So if there's a dead ash tree somewhere in that 60 feet, it's got to come out. So that wouldn't stay, but anything that could be saved, mature trees and vegetation in that area, we are certainly planning on keeping. We had a discussion earlier this evening about whether we may increase that buffer from 60 feet to 70, all the way potentially up to 100. So that's something as a board we're going to look at and consider in order to be, respectful to the adjacent property owners, including yourself. So what else did you ask in there? I'm sorry.
No, that was amazing. And I only bullet pointed because out of respect for the time you're giving me outside of normal jurisdiction. So I didn't mean to barrage you with questions. Thank you. Those are a lot of answers. Now, in the space between the buffer, are you open to any private investment as far as adding some like shrubs or trees or anything?
Yeah, so I was actually asked that by one of the residents that I spoke with, who lives over there on Garden Parkway. And my response to that would be, at this time initially in budgeting for this park to get up and running, the current answer is not right now. However, my hope is to have an actual dog dog park committee that would help to oversee and improve upon the existing park that the village puts in. And then, you know, at that point, there could be certainly an open discussion about, you know, adding to that existing vegetation. Trustee Yates earlier had mentioned that he received an email from someone who was willing to donate 50 trees perhaps to the village, so that could be a possibility. And I did stress to the person I spoke with, I mean, I don't want this to be, you know, a derelict looking dog park area. I mean, I do want to uphold it to a very high standard as a new park amenity to the village of Williamsville. So I don't know if that eases anyone's concerns who's listening, but that's certainly, you know, where I see this going when it goes into the ground.
Well, as a resident, I mean, we've enjoyed the natural habitat. Understandably, it's park land and park gets to decide what to do with it. The deer, believe it or not, are much more concerned than maybe others worry about it. As I said, it's a large family of deer. They've had babies twice in our backyard behind our house, not in our property. And I believe they'd be pretty displaced. So I just did wonder if there was consideration for any wildlife, not just the deer. And then when you said 100 feet buffer, and then I'll leave it at this, as I said, I know you guys have had a long night. Is that going to be something that there'll be a hearing on, that there'll be open discussion, that there'll be any influence or anything from the community in regards to when that decision is made? Because we're more concerned with noise and with affect our own animals. As I said, that's pretty, you know, 60 feet is not that far. Especially after the winter and the springtime when you can see right through.
I will say this, this is Trustee Yates. I think in the earlier, and we discussed it at earlier in the meeting, by making it smaller, the design of this is not to be what, if you've ever been to the one up on New Road in North Amherst, the design of this one would keep it smaller, and basically, if you can't really walk to it, it's not as, so it's not, it should not garner having 20 dog groups coming over. And that's right. What the mayor said she didn't want. She really wanted it for those of us who are adjacent to it. You know, I live in the neighborhood as well. So by making it smaller and trying to save money and to give you guys a buffer, it also limits it. It's going to be maybe as small as a half an acre. So 100 dogs won't fit over there. So I could understand you thinking there's going to be 100 dogs at one time, all barking. And you're trying to have a barbecue, and your dad who's half deaf, he can't hear anything because there's 100 dogs going off. I get it. So I think by the massaging of this, it may be something a lot more suitable to you guys as well.
Well, definitely appreciate the consideration.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I said, I do want to be respectful to all of you adjacent property owners, and you know, and I think just, you know, making it more of, I think Trustee Torrey said, like more of a boutique dog park that really is there for the people who are in walking their dogs every day throughout the village, for the residents who live here. That is really what I see it being. Not to say that, you know, we're gonna, if somebody shows up who doesn't live in the village, they can certainly use it. But, you know, I just don't want, like, you know, I don't envision like 10 carfuls of dog owners coming and let's say, let's all meet at the South Lawn Park. And then you've got like 10 dogs, you know, so I think having a smaller size will definitely help to curb that. And that's really, I think, the direction, what I'm hearing, that the board is in agreement in going, as opposed to something larger. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for hearing me out, especially outside of normal session. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Where did we leave off at? So.
I was done.
You're done? Okay, so, and then I think, so Trustee Torrey, you're up for work session.
Good evening. With the village elections coming up, and I will partake in them again, I've done a little research, and I was just questioning some of the way they're run. And so I basically talked to somebody from NICOM to assist me with explaining the whole situation better. And what I've come to realize, that we had an election in 2019, and then a special election in 2020. We're going to have another general election in 21. and then possibly another special election in 22, and another general election in 23. So these are 5 consecutive years of elections within the village, a year apart. The last election I participated in, which was awkward as it was because it took place in September, nobody knew what was going on. Everybody was confused in the village. I had to answer many questions when I went door to door with the petitions. And I just don't think it's a good idea at this point to have more elections than necessary. So I've come to realize that with Trustee Yates resigning effective April 5, his election is less than 75 days to our upcoming general election on June 15th. Mayor Rogers will appoint a new trustee who will serve the remaining 2 months, an additional year, at which time a special election will have to take place, as I mentioned. However, if Trustee Yates resigns by April 1, which is just 4 days short of what he presently wants to resign at, the village could have another seat available on the ballot for the June 15 election to complete Trustee Yates' 2 remaining years, and the village would not need to hold another special election next year. So April 1st is the last day a vacancy may occur to be placed on a general election ballot because of the 75 days or more from the April 1st designation date. So I'm putting it out there. You know, there may be other candidates who will run with me, or, you know, the other person who plans to run for Trustee Piazza seat. What do you think? Am I wrong? And plus it saves us not only money, because I asked how much such a election runs, and Judy said it's about $1,000, but that really doesn't even involve the overtime that the staff puts in, because the voting polls are open till 9 p.m. and all the amazing prep work that has to be done, and the ballots that have to be printed, and the press that has to be done. I mean, it's more than just $1,000 in the long run. So I wanted to put it out there and ask all of you how you thought about, Al, I don't want you to resign any earlier than you want to, but for the sake of the village and saving the money and the effort and the time, if we could not move it up and propose to have another person on the ballot.
Okay, so I'm gonna just, really, this is Trustee Yates's decision of when he resigns, not your decision or mine or anybody's up here.
No, but I just wanted to put it out there.
Well, you know, I think the only person you need to put it out there to is Trustee Yates. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Trustee Yates and let him answer that question.
Yeah, like I said earlier in my comments, I feel like this is what is good for the board, is to be here as long as I can. Otherwise, we create a vacancy that wouldn't be filled until June, because there would be nobody here. So all of my committees would not have a liaison or a voice to come back to. Otherwise, the board has to split the rest of those up equally to have a voice go to this board. So I'm happy to do whatever the board wants to do, but ultimately, I mean, I'm technically still going to be a resident until the 20th, when our house actually closes here in the village. So that's kind of the date I decided was as late as I could, because we'll officially buy our house and close on our house on the 8th in Ohio, but ours here in New York is not closed yet.
No,
So
no,
I'm
I understand that, but I understand that, Al, but I just, as a citizen and as a resident, you know, every year we've had these elections, and after a while, people are going to come out to vote anymore because they just don't get it.
Right.
You know, it's just
Yeah,
so
it's been a
bizarre.
continuous problem, unfortunately. Yeah, and we've had this ever since I've been on the board. I was appointed, somebody else vacated a seat, there was another appointment, so.
Yeah.
I think many of us sitting here tonight, including.
I was appointed.
Yeah, was appointed. So Matt and both were appointed, so
Yeah.
it's, I think in a small village like this, with things the way they turn over, it seems to have been a regular thing within the last 8 to 10 years, potentially, where there's been always an appointment in a special election. So.
Yeah, I understand that, but 5 consecutive years of voting, honestly?
But that's not for you to really dictate. That's New York State village
No,
election.
I'm not dictating that. I'm just suggesting that if we, if Al resigned a few days prior, we wouldn't have to have another special election next year. We would save that time and effort, but, I'm just putting it out there because I just thought overall it'd be a good idea. It'll be less work for the village. We'd save money. We're always looking ways to save money. So, all right, that's all.
Well, I
That's
didn't do it
fine.
to create, I didn't do it to create a burden. to the
No,
village.
no,
I'm
no, and
happy
it's
to
not
board
about
members.
you, Al. It's just
Yeah, I know.
overall the way, NICOM runs these elections, and I just wanted to really do some investigative work and find out what the dates were and what the days were and all that, because it was very confusing to me, because I've only been on the board, for 6 months? And I wanted to clarify this whole thing in my own mind. And I
Sure.
thought I'd just put it out there to everybody, to see how you thought. And that's all. You don't have to change your ways, but I just wanted to make suggestions. That's all.
Sure. Yeah. It's
All
always
right.
good to vet every system. I think that's what we all do or should be
Yeah.
doing, as I mentioned earlier. So
Exactly. So, but anyway, so that's said. That's why I want to talk about elections. And now to Earth Day, we do have a few things that came up with Earth Day. Number one, John Nickerson approached Ed Youngs about being a co-sponsor, which means they would co-sponsor the event and also, offer to pay half of the stipend. But to do so, they would request a co-sponsorship letter from the village. Now, I don't know how you felt about that. So I was going to ask and bring it to the board if we even do that.
What's the sponsorship for?
It's for the Dare to Repair Cafe, because they would partake in it in terms of having somebody available to suggest, if we need certain items to repair things, they would have somebody present at the Dare to Repair Cafe, and they could call into Ed Youngs and say, do we have this particular sprue or this, whatever. And then the person who brought in the product could go back there and buy that particular item. So they wanted to know if we want them to co-sponsor it. If we do, they would request a letter from the village to do so.
yeah, I guess it's more of a budget line item.
Yeah, I guess I might defer to Chip here. It's kind of the cart before the horse a little bit, because we can't solicit sponsorships. If they wanted to offer the sponsorship, we can certainly accept it. But I don't think we can send them a letter saying, we want you to do this.
We can't, the village can't solicit donations. I guess I'm not entirely sure what we mean by a sponsorship.
Well, the Dare to Repair Cafe is asking for a $200 stipend from the village. And what they do, they bring in the manpower and the tools and the knowledge to set up, and the advertising and many, many different things.
Yeah, so if the village wants to, if the village board, and this is a village event, right? Earth Day is a village sponsored event. Yeah, if they want to hire what is in this essence a vendor to come in, and they want to charge $200 for that, that's fine. That's a legitimate public purpose. But we can't make a donation, and just a donation, even no matter how worthy the cause may be. But if they're going to be providing a service at our event, I don't see any issue with that.
But that's not the issue. So the issue is that John sought out Ed Youngs to split the cost of that stipend. Do I understand you correctly, Eileen?
Right. John approached them.
They want a letter from us to basically to Ed Youngs, encouraging them to split the cost with us.
Well, we invite them to co-sponsor. I know,
Yeah, I mean, it gets a little, so I do think that is problematic because I do think that is soliciting we really can't solicit. That's the problem.
I thought committee members could. Can they not?
No, another organization can.
Okay.
But nobody from the village can solicit a donation, or I guess in this case, a sponsorship. If Ed Youngs wants to do that, great. But we can't really ask them to, I guess.
I mean, it's only $100.
Right, I realize
Yeah,
this is
fine.
I mean,
You
this
know,
is,
John made the effort to, can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My ear pods died. But John made the effort to go to Ed Young's and ask, so I definitely wanted to come back with an answer for him. So that's fine. I don't think it matters either way at this point.
I love the fact that they're willing to participate. That's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they still will. I mean, I think
Right.
it's wonderful to have somebody from Ed Young's present for, you know, in case
Sure.
somebody there would like to know if a certain product can be bought there. It's great. But so another issue we had was Messenger Woods. Messenger Woods is a non-for-profit wildlife rehabilitator who's they have attended Earth Day ever since its conception, basically, not with a car tire part, but after that. And they bring, you know, animals that they rehab and they educate children who come to the event. They all look very forward to it. Now, this is the very first year that Messenger Wood has asked for a donation, because with COVID and with the change of receiving 501c donations, they're really in dire need of money, obviously. So they're asking for anywhere between $50 and $250 donation, depending on the size of the event. Now, all these years they've come out and they have asked us for nothing. And I really would like to have them there. So I know our budget is closed and I don't know if I can ask the village for money.
I have no problem with paying Messenger Woods as a vendor for a service that they're providing to the village. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But they can't.
Yeah, no,
receive from us.
I agree with that. And look, they're coming in, maybe they've done it for free in the past, but if they are no longer able to do that or willing to do that and they want to charge the village that and we want them to be there, you know, I mean, it's up to you guys to decide whether you want to incur that expense, but I don't see a legal problem with that. Again, it's not really.
It's no different than renting the Ferris wheel.
What's prohibited
They
is
need a
just to
form
make.
from them, though. They need a form.
Can they?
They need a form to get to us. Yeah, submit an invoice with their tax.
Right.
What's that form you need, Ollie? What is it? Yeah, so they would need to submit a W-9 form for us to, with the invoice. So then we can actually submit payment to them. So those are the two things we need, a W-9 form and, you know, an invoice. And the invoice should have like their name and their address and who to make the check payable to.
I'm just curious, do they do approximately the same thing that Hawk Creek also does?
Yes, they do, but Hop Creek is never available. We've asked them numerous times because they have their
Okay.
own events on weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Messenger Woods has always come through. I mean, they've never said no. So I think that's great if we could do that. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So now, that's it with Earth Day, I believe. Oh no, one more question. We're gonna do a little giveaway. So we decided on buying native plant seed packets. And our question was, do we have village stickers we can put on the plant packets when we hand them to people who come to Earth Day? We have something like that, or a stamp that says village?
I don't think we do.
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
Yeah,
We could get labels,
Yeah.
you could get labels and just print out Village of Williamsville to
yeah,
enjoy
anything
or.
that actually signifies that it's from us, it's a gift.
Yeah,
you know,
well, you could say
we
gift.
want
Yeah,
only-
mailing
we want
labels.
only native
Yeah,
plants,
that's
we
it.
want people to grow in their
Yeah.
gardens.
We could print some of those
We could
out,
make
right?
some.
Some labels, that's easy
Yeah, we
to
don't
print
have them
out.
available, but we could make some easily, yeah, sure.
Oh, great, all right. So
How
that
we
is
need?
it for Earth Day. But to continue with the Environmental Committee, I did mention that I did mention to our members that we were updating the LED lighting in Glen Park and the Cobra lights throughout the village. And John Nickerson, who works for National Grid, alerted me to the fact that we could possibly get funding from National Grid for the lighting upgrades. And I gave him Judy's email address as well as Ben's, and he and Ben spoke. And I have not heard back what the conversation was. But Ben, are you on? Could you tell us what you and John decided to do?
Yeah, we approved this during our budget. So we're all set, I believe, with National Grid. They were just sending the paperwork over and we are getting an incentive for switching over.
Oh, good. So that's all taken care of.
It should be in the works, yeah, unless something's changed.
Because I didn't know.
Okay, hold on.
John said he could help us with that.
Ben,
Listen to Ben.
Are you, okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody, can you hear me? Thank you.
Yes.
I spoke with John. I spoke with John and I explained to him that Glen Park is owned wholly by the village. And he is looking into what opportunities might exist with that. He was not aware that it was not municipally, or it was not in any way owned by National Grid. So he's looking into what may be available for us there.
Okay, so the park itself.
Budget for that, though.
No.
No, so that wasn't budgeted for this year. That would probably have to be a next year
and
budget.
that would come out of Glen Park.
It would come out of Glen Park.
Oh, I've already approved,
Say again,
Glen Park has already authorized and has purchased, Glen Park has authorized the purchase of LED lights. And that is a project that Zachar is mobilizing on.
Okay. Okay,
So
Right.
now John is looking into another aspect of funding, whether or not that can happen or not, who knows? And John now understands a little bit more of the context of the project and is looking into what we can do, what he can do.
Because we were going to change out all the LED lights and the Cobra lights, right, throughout the village?
yeah, we are doing that project. We
Right.
budgeted for that.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what he's pertaining to as well, that he offered his assistance on that to make sure we got the funding.
Great.
No, he was strictly speaking of Glen Park.
No, but he also said the village to me though, Ben. I told him that there were two different aspects. I said there was
Yeah.
Glen Park and then there was the village. They're two separate things what we're doing here. And he agreed to look into both of them for me.
No, he did not speak of the village with me today, so.
Yeah, I did tell him about the difference though, definitely. So I can get back to him on that though, to make sure.
It has a lot to do with the ownership of the poles and the structure, the power and the light bulb. The National Grid owns all of the overhead lights. And that's a
Oh, wow.
pretty easy, basic program that they have. We fall in a different category of commercial usage. So he's looking into what rebates might be available for commercial users, quote unquote, commercial users or a municipality like us. And that is because we own all of the light pole wire bulbs in Glen Park.
Okay.
Co-owned with the town of Amherst. So it makes it even more wonderfully complicated.
Oh, yes, it does. All right. All right. Well, thanks for that, Ben. And
And
then,
to that end, the
yeah,
Glen Park Joint Board has already approved the purchase of
Right.
new LED bulbs. So if you want me to cancel that, I can cancel
no,
it.
don't. No, Ben, no.
So
Because
that's
we're
kind
already,
of where I'm getting
a lot of
to.
them are installed. Absolutely not. Yeah.
Okay,
No, we're good. And
all right.
you're also working, Ben's also working on a scout work plan that Pete Warren, chairman, submitted, where the scouts will be painting the benches and some of the, I guess, the poles within the pavilion. Is that right, Ben? Did you get the work plan?
I got it late on Friday and half the printing is ineligible. I can't read it.
Oh, no. Okay.
So he's in the general, he's proposing to do something within the village. I need to dig into that proposal proposal a little bit deeper.
Okay,
And
All
it's
right.
not without precedence. We've done it before. I guess it ultimately comes down to the board if you're willing to accept Scouts labor to paint bench.
Okay, that's good. I
Anybody?
appreciate it. Yeah, get back to Pete on that, please, please. All right, that's all I have.
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately the board has to make that decision.
Oh, wait a minute, I have one more question though. Matt, would your daughter be willing to do the Skip the Straw event at Earth Day?
I can certainly ask her. She has.
Because Jane brought it up. She goes, she was so wonderful and so impressed by your daughter and her friends that she asked if she could come back, please.
I will ask her. You know, the politics of middle school are different than elementary school, so the group may not be as tight as they once were, but I will broach that topic.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Yates?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to, if it's okay, I just wanted to clarify, because this is being recorded, people are gonna view it possibly over and over again, and the public is on. Staff members don't get overtime for working the election. So I just wanted to state that for the record.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, you don't, because it's really the Board of Elections that's running the election.
So.
And all of those members are just paid a flat stipend for the day, all of our election officers, correct? So.
It was stated, and I just wanted to make sure that it gets.
Oh, okay, well, that's a good, yeah, okay.
I don't want anybody, I mean, when the press was on, you know, I don't want anyone walking away thinking that we do.
Right, okay, thank you. I think that's a good point.
I beg to differ. We do open the doors with a DPW employee.
True.
So there is sometimes overtime
Okay.
for the election, just on our front. So just to be absolutely clear.
Okay.
But for the village election, isn't it just 12 to 9, the hours?
That's right, village election.
So it's a village election, Ben, it's not the.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for me too, yeah. Thank
Okay,
you.
so just so we're all clear, then there is no
6
overtime,
a.m. for
correct?
village elections, you should.
I'm sorry, what?
What's that? So just to clarify, there is no election, or there is no village overtime paid during the election, right? Not this one.
For a
because it's
village election.
For a village
Yes.
election.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. My apologies.
That's okay.
Okay, anything else that you
No,
want to? Okay,
that's all. I just
No, that's
wanted to
good.
make sure that for the record, we have that on there.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, you know, for the record, you can't really argue with New York State election law, so put that on the record. Trustee Al Gates, you have a.
Yeah, just a quick note, in the meeting, what the committee was asking for was, I think they would like to potentially pursue flags for the Main Street like we've done, and Michelle Richter said she would be willing to do something, and maybe something like different colored hands all holding or something, and we put those up maybe just in the quadrant. And if there wasn't funds in the current, or for next year potentially, is that they were thinking, you know, should we do something with the Arts and Festival or the Arts and Culture Committee? Because she thought we had funded that line at some point, so she wanted to know, could there be funds used for that, for them to
Right.
maybe design something?
So I need to clarify that, when I'm reading these meeting minutes from the Culture Conversations Committee. The Welcome to Williamsville banners, which she designed,
Right.
were not completely paid for by that committee because that committee didn't have the sufficient funds to cover the cost of the banners.
Okay.
So Judy, can you give us those numbers where that came from, that breakdown? You sent me an email. Do you want me to pull, do you have it in front of you? If not, I'll pull the email up. Okay, just give me 1 second.
Yeah, so I told him, I said, I don't know what's in our budget.
Okay,
There's
for
so,
nothing because they didn't exist.
So, right.
Oh,
So
okay.
So, well, yeah.
Okay, so
next year, I think
we budgeted $500 for
Okay.
Cultural Conversations. That was actually my suggestion to
Yeah.
budget, because when I asked you for a budget from that committee,
Yep.
you said they didn't give you a budget.
Yeah.
So I said, let's at least give them 500, because I
Yeah.
thought that was a good starting point
Yep.
as in relation to other committees that we have.
Right.
So the new village banners that we had that were created by Michelle Richter, they were cost, the total on that was $2,907. This was for 38 banners at $76.50 each. Okay, that price was pre-COVID, so I'm guessing the price may have gone up depending on what
Sure.
vendor they plan on going to. The funding for those banners came through the arts and culture line item. However, there were not enough funds in that line item, so we did budget transfers from the Glen Park Art Festival and the Main Street Block Party, both from within the same department. Okay, so that's kind of where that is, and I guess the other comment, so I just want to maybe correct that in the minutes, you know, the mayor found other funds to purchase and it did not count against the committee. Yes, it did not count against the committee, but I'd like somebody to make note that where the actual funds came for future
Yeah.
reference. And then the other point that I just wanted to clear up here is that there was no Amherst Symphony Orchestra concert, so their $2,500 budget line for arts and culture committee, which was used for that concert, could be moved to the cultural conversations committee for the year. The budget for the 2021-2022 cultural conversations committee is only at 500 now. So that's also an option for them as well.
Okay.
My comment is, I believe they were looking to hang banners in February. And
Well, I think that would obviously be too late.
I asked
Right.
Ben about hanging banners in February, and he would prefer not to.
Right.
For safety reasons.
Well, that's what I was kind of thinking too.
However, he said, you know, they could hang them down Spring Street, but the weather aspect, and then he had sent me a picture, they're not gonna last.
Right.
So if they wanna move them to a different month, you know, a
Right.
nicer month, there's probably some leeway where we could put them up.
Sure, yep.
Um,
And I think that's what was a conversation starter, because I was thinking that the winter time would be difficult for the guys to be putting flags up in February, unfortunately. So,
June, usually all the high winds are going too.
Right.
Yeah, it's about a month.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So-
currently, we do the village banners from, I believe, the beginning of June till the beginning of July.
right,
July, we do the art festival
Mhm.
banners. And then we do starting last year, we got the Amherst Symphony banners, so we did those from,
June 29th through November 15th.
yeah, so.
Mhm.
So, I mean, maybe, you know, one of the nicer months might be a better time
yeah, I
to
agree.
put those.
We can go
Yeah.
May.
Yeah.
Something's up in May. But for this year, well, obviously, it's already the end of March.
Yeah, we may be late on that.
So
And yeah,
look into
I think
next
if
year.
you look, I didn't know what was left in our budget for this current fiscal year. They were saying, should we go ahead and get started on it? So well, it depends on the funds and what's
Right.
available.
I mean, they
you
would
know?
have, because of the price, they would have to get a couple of quotes. But like Deb said, we didn't have ASO last year.
Right.
So that money is sitting in the department. So that could be used towards the purchase
Sure.
of banners.
Yeah, and I don't know that we necessarily need them for every single poll, or do you just do them in the, what I call the core?
You're right.
and-
We could
Or
do
stagger
half.
them more,
We could
absolutely,
do half the village banners and half these new
Yeah.
banners.
right. Mhm.
April is diversity month.
Yeah, so maybe you do April next year,
Oh, that's a
Right.
good thought.
Or
Maybe
if there's
do
time.
April.
you know,
And then you could do the spring banners, then after that, spring, summer banners, I'll call them. You could
Right.
do those
Yeah.
right after, and then get into Glen Park Arts Festival and then Amherst Symphony.
yeah,
But that's a good, you know,
Yeah,
that's a good time.
that's good.
So,
All right. Well, I will leave you with that, that's my last and final.
all right, so department head reports. Nobody has anything on the agenda except for Ben.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, Flynn Battaglia took a look at the section house. Obviously, they're doing construction documents. The exterior stabilization aspect of it is going to be considerably more effort than was initially expected. And they're basically, this letter is flagging that and saying, hey, it's not going to happen in this project. We'll get the roof done. Board, would you like to do windows? Would you like to hold off on windows? Do it as a comprehensive project with the exterior, which I would recommend. And do you want them to provide a more comprehensive proposal for that work?
Do we have money, what money do we have for 2021? Is it the CDBG money?
Yes,
That's about
Yes.
49,000,
40.
40,000.
That'll get the roof done and the fascia, and get it weather tight, as long as we're okay keeping boards on the windows.
Do they have a budget for the windows?
No, nothing yet. And it ties into the exterior as well. So I don't know that we would necessarily be wise to go ahead and put windows in and then have to take them out again to do the exterior work.
Right.
And those are investigations that have not occurred and would cost money to do.
So, okay, so if not doing the windows and the roof is fully covered by the CDBG, what's their question then?
The question is, are we going to entertain another proposal to do the exterior stabilization? Do you want to go down that route? It's going to be, the work itself is going to be a lot more expensive. The sheathing, the asbestos wrap essentially on the building that's connected to the speed tile is coming apart. So it's a pretty, I don't know, Matt, we should go look at it, but they want to warn us that the only thing that's going to get done this year is the roof. We're not going to do exterior stabilization as they envision it initially. And how far down, do we want to go? Do we want to ask them for another proposal?
Well, I think, yeah.
Yeah, obviously, I think, yeah, but we may be surprised at what that's going to cost.
Well, then can't we just kind of do the same route that we did with the meeting house, which was pretty much wait until we get grant funding and take it a step at a time to do the work, which is basically what we did at the meeting house.
And that's exactly what this, yeah.
So it may be several years before that building is a viable, usable building with that understanding.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. But we're going to get the roof done.
Yeah.
And we can talk more about the windows and all the rest of it.
Okay.
So that's all that is. And then the bridge inspection, our bridge over to Island Park hasn't been inspected since 2012. I'm not an expert, Matt. What do you think? Should we be doing a more frequent inspection of it?
Well, I'll tell you, I made a conscious decision in college to not pay any attention to bridges, so.
Wise move. And this was precipitated by the understanding that there were grant bridges out there and culvert and bridge. We've since kind of talked with Ed Schiller, and we're not really going to fit that criteria, but then it came to light that we don't have a recent inspection. If we want to go for grants for anything, we should know what we're asking for and what the condition of our stuff is. So if you guys want to go ahead with the low bid with the DiDonato, they did it the last time.
Yeah, and they're considerably low.
Yeah, well, they have all the documentation. They did it last time.
Less than $4,000.
I'm more comfortable doing it this year only because I know the Jolly Boys are probably going to try and have the event this year, and I know that involves some pretty heavy beer trucks going across that bridge. I'd rather know for sure that things are okay.
We ran a lot of stone and material across that bridge last year, and it gets a lot of use. So we should know what we have.
Yeah, I mean, and there's obviously work that needs to be done onto it. I mean, it's
yep.
but I I'm never gonna say that an inspection of a bridge is a bad idea.
Yes.
Especially one that's, the last time someone gave it a hard look was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's $4,000. We should just go forward and do it.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
That's it for me.
Okay, Keaton, do you have anything else to add?
Nothing else to add. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, if nobody has anything else to add, oh yeah.
Pool attendance. Should we move forward looking for pool attendance?
Yeah, I thought that was the decision, we were gonna
Okay.
pursue that. Because with the
Double
understanding
checking.
that if, it's a lot easier to say thanks but no thanks than it is to suddenly be like, oh crap, we gotta get them.
Okay, and how much do we want to pay them? Typically, in the past, we've always paid about $1 more than minimum wage.
Mhm.
Minimum wage
Minimum
this
wage
year is what?
$12.50.
Well, then, are you talking 13.50?
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I think we should
Yeah,
go
I
to
think we
historically
should.
what we paid them.
Yeah.
Okay, and then anybody that comes back, they get an extra quarter for each year that they.
That's still
previous-
legitimate.
Okay,
Mhm.
as long as everybody's agreeable, that, I just wanted to make sure before I
Mhm.
put it in an ad in the paper and,
Mhm.
Agreed.
okay, that's all.
Okay, good. And then on that note, we will proceed with getting the pool cleaned up and ready to go.
Okay.
Okay,
We'll have to do a little bit of patching, not as bad as in years past, but we'll be good to go. Good to know. Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
all right, that's everything unless anybody has anything else to add. If not, we'll adjourn this evening.
Make it so.
Okay, all right.
Eileen, good luck tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good
good
luck.
luck.
Yes, Eileen, best wishes.
Good
Thank
luck.
you.
What time do they make you get there in the morning?
5 o'clock.
Oh, boy.
Go to bed.
Ooh.
You'll be walking by 5 p.m.
I hope you're right, Basil. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Probably, they had my husband up and out of bed walking, his surgery was at, by the time they took him, it was like 9:30, by 2 o'clock he was walking.
That's great.
Not without help, but with a cane and not very far, but, and then later that day he had physical therapy, so it's amazing. Without a brace, what they have you doing when they